Oh, well, I see sunrise. See the love in my woman's eyes. Feel the touch of a precious child. And your mother's love. It's empty. And cold beer on a Friday night. A pair of jeans that fit just right. And the radio. Let's see sunrise. See the love in my woman's eyes. Feel the touch of a precious child. And your mother's love. Go. Then he the book thing about open up all the big old can. Good time. Don't it feel good? Don't it feel good? Yeah, don't it feel good? At the floor of Alabama, sitting here at the floor of Alabama, sitting here at the floor of Alabama. She said I'm going out with my girlfriends. Margaritas at the Holiday Inn. Oh, have mercy, my own thought. Was tequila makes her clothes fall off. I told her put an extra layer on. I know what happens when she drinks Patron. Closet's missing half the things she bought. Yeah, tequila makes her clothes fall off. She'll start by kicking out of her shoes, losing the earring in her drain. Leave her jacket in the bathroom stall. Drop a contact down the sink. Them pantyhose ain't gonna last too long. If the DJ puts Bon Jovi on, she might come home in a tank cloth. Yeah, tequila makes her clothes fall off. Whoa! She can handle any champagne brunch, bridal shower with Bacardi punch, Jello shooters full of smearing on, but tequila makes her clothes fall off. She'll start by kicking out of her shoes, losing the earring in her drain. Leave your jacket in the bathroom stall. Drop a contact down the sink. She don't mean nothing, she's just having fun. Tomorrow she'll say, oh, and how have I done? Friends will joke about the stuff she loves. Yeah, tequila makes her clothes fall off. Oh, tequila makes her clothes fall off. I'm gonna kill, makes her clothes fall off.
Pardon me, I don't mean to pry. I saw the tears falling from your eyes, and I thought, oh, you're too pretty not to wear a smile. Hope you don't mind if I sit down for a while. I want to keep a little time, a little song, a little if I'm a man, will you bring us to keep a little time with you? Talking it all out, see what you're all about. I will be wanting to keep a little time with me too. You don't have to talk about the past. Here's the move forward and I look back. Little later we can take it to the dance floor, but until then, let's order a couple more cups. I want to keep that good time. So, everybody when you bring us to a little time to keep talking it all out, see what you're all about. I will be wanting to keep a little time with me too. It's good to see you laughing. I can see sad to happy. Now let's just get to dancing. Come on. I want to keep a little time with you. It's all around. If I'm when you bring us to, I want to keep a little time with you. Talking it all out, see what you're all about. I want to keep a little time with you. To keep a little time with you. To what you want to keep a little time with you. To
Get out of here, pass me a beer, and I'ma keep playing this music that you hear. And if you know the song, come and sing along with me. Walking with the seats to my left, seat to my right, and I'ma get heated at the tiki bar tonight. And I'ma rolling up like my name is Bob. Yeah, I'm going to party
Morning,
like
everyone.
I'm a Jamaican. Know where you can find me.
Get our meeting started almost on time. All right, and as you're settling in, just a few housekeeping items before we get started. In the Tanbark, the restrooms are located off to stage right, so underneath the big American flag if you need to use those. Hopefully you found the refreshments table in the middle of the room. Help yourself to that, obviously, before we get started, but we will also stop for a break about halfway through. There is a cooler of free milk up by the front doors. That's compliments of World Dairy Expo, but we are welcome to enjoy that while we're in here as well. This morning, we will be using Slido for questions for our speakers and presenters. There is a QR code on your table, so you can submit those questions. If you have any issues or you would like to verbally ask your question instead, we will also have a microphone available. But because it is a big space, please make sure you raise your hand and we'll get you a microphone. And I think with that, I'm going to welcome Lindsay Warden to the stage. She is our current CDCB board chair. So welcome, Lindsay.
Thank you very much, Katie. Good morning, everyone. As Katie just said, my name is Lindsay Warden, and I'm Holstein Association USA's Chief Operating Officer and the current chair of the Council on Dairy Cattle Breeding Board of Directors. It's my pleasure to welcome you to CDCB's 10th Annual Industry Meeting here at World Dairy Expo. We're honored to have so many of you joining us today. Dairy farmers, industry leaders, researchers, and stakeholders alike, united by our shared interest and commitment to advancing dairy cattle breeding and genetic improvement. I'd like to also offer a special welcome to those of us who are joining us from around the world on the live stream today. World Dairy Expo has long been a showcase for the global dairy community, and it's fitting that we gather here to reflect on how far we've come as an industry and where we're headed next. Our progress in the world of genetics and breeding has been extraordinary, and none of it would be possible without the collaboration and dedication of all of our industry stakeholders. Throughout today's meeting, we will explore the theme of the integrated value of the U.S. genetic evaluation system, a collaborative industry framework that includes dairy farmers, breed associations, milk testing organization, dairy records processing centers, the National Association of Animal Breeders, genomic testing organizations, research institutes, USDA AGIL, and the Council on Dairy Cattle Breeding. As we start today's program, I want to thank each of you for your interest in the work that CDCB is doing. The success of our industry depends on continuous improvement, and it's the relationships formed at meetings like this that will help us achieve that. On behalf of the CDCB Board of Directors, I welcome you once again and look forward to all of the discussions that we will have today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lindsay. And it is my privilege now to welcome Dr. Zhao Dur to the stage. He is the current CEO, and only CEO to date, of the Council on Dairy Cattle Breeding. So welcome, Zhao.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I tried to say good morning in person to everybody, but I certainly missed many of you. So can you bring me the microphone? Because then I forgot to pick it up there. So this is great to see, full house again. And I think this venue here is much better than the place we used to be the previous years. And we're glad to talk about what happened this year. I'm not prepared. I didn't bring the slide changer, so I'll have to improvise here. So basically, you have in your hands the annual report. And this is a heavy, dense reading, but I challenge you to try because there's so much nice information, good information here. And it really represents, it really represents a lot of effort, not only by the CDCB staff and board, but also by all the community that is engaged in this system. So this has been put together, and it's so well written that I'm not going to go through all the facts that are here, because you can read and you can learn much better from the report. But basically, you're going to have a full menu of different types of information about who is working on what, and what are the groups that are helping us to progress, what are the projects that we have, and basically what are the challenges that we are facing for research and development, for implementation of new traits and these kind of things. So first of all, my sincere thanks to our board, because this board has been visionary, has put together a really efficient business model that has brought us here, and they are really committed with the cause of CDCB and the industry as a whole. So in the name of the staff, we're very, very, very grateful to have this board. So you'll find this kind of numbers in the report. I'm not going to repeat everything there. What I'm really here to talk about today is our strategy. So we have been deeply committed to discuss where CDCB is going, not by itself, but with all the partnerships, all the members. And these past 2 years have been intense in discussions, in planning, and in implementation of new projects and ideas. So just to remind you, I showed you, or actually Lindsay showed you this picture last year. What are the priorities that have been identified by the community around CDCB? It's basically invest in collaborative communication. Oops, how can I go back? Okay. Data quality and integration, which I'm going to be talking in more detail here today. Technology, infrastructure, also training and resources. We know that human factor is the key to move anything ahead. And of course, we need to be always paying attention to the demands, what the industry really needs, what is the portfolio of products that we have to offer. So these are the priorities that we have been trying to address. This is a very busy slide. You also have this in your report. But this is what came out of these discussions. We had a workshop last year in August in which we had representatives of all sectors of the industry. And these are pretty specific. And they are basically pointing towards the direction that the industry needs to go. So addressing all these points at the same time is really challenging. We're doing our best to structure our group and also our partnerships in order to adapt to changes. So, for example, we have improved our administration by bringing a business manager that have made my life very much easier than before. About developing talents, we continue to invest in new young talents that are becoming part of the team, but also investing in our internship program that is a really successful initiative. This year, again, we had 3 brilliant students with us. You can read about them in the report. The diversification of portfolio is something that is a consequence of everything else that we do, but we are looking at how we can diversify market presence and customize our products. And again, everything CDCB does is through the membership, through the breed associations, through the DRPCs, DRPs, through the NAB members, through the nominators. So everything we do is really working together with this community to find the solutions that the producers need. Foster innovation. So we have been identifying individuals that can bring that kind of new talent to the CDCB. We have brought a new Chief Research and Development Officer, John Cole. So we are stepping up our internal research and development. John will be talking to you later. Also, Chip Donaton has been hired to be a visionary for us on the software development and data structure, and so many others. So we are trying to bring into the group that kind of talent that we need to keep up with the times. Communication. This here is a consequence of us having now an outreach specialist and outreach strategy. And you probably saw the presence of CDCB much more in the past 2 years because Katie has been leading that effort together with Luke East. Also, data streams. This is a big thing, and we will be talking more about that in a while. Branding. Also, there are materials here about branding. I'm not going to talk about that because somebody else will cover that. But it's something that is important because what our brand means everything we do because of the data we get from the producers. So we need to make the world know that this system is only possible because we have the data coming from dairy producers, and they are engaged in maintaining a system like this. So this is important for us to continue to talk about. And of course, partnerships are always the only way ahead. Nobody can do anything alone. So in terms of data, the National Cooperative Database purpose, you saw this slide last year if you were here, but I will go again through this because it's the reason why we are doing what we are doing. So what we want with this database, we want to sustain state-of-the-art research. So why US is in the leading place in terms of genetics, in terms of animal improvement, because of the data. Otherwise, we wouldn't have research. So the database is a starting point. Of course, USDA has been tremendous. It's been really something that the work that has been done in Beltsville with the data that the producers provided, it's something unique and brought us here over the past 40, 50 years of research that has been done there. But they needed the data. And what we're going to do, develop data-driven processes, genetic evaluation, and other types of products. For what purpose? To empower dairy producers. I mean, okay, well, this is used also to sell semen, to sell embryos, to sell cows. Well, but this is all for the benefit of the dairy producers. We want to have the best possible information available so that our community can grow. And then we want to be sustainable, and sustainable in all aspects, economically too, not only in terms of environment, and manage the business based on the information that come out of this system. This is also a picture that you're going to see in the report, and it's basically telling us how sophisticated the system is for data collection and data flow and data processing. So I'm not going to talk a lot about this, but basically we can see here how many actors, how many companies, how many people are involved and engaged to make this system work. So CDCB is just the steward of this database, but the data belongs to the producers, and the data is only there because there are a whole bunch of other sectors that are working directly with the producers to make it happen. So this integration, this collaboration is a fundament of what we do. So what we need to do for this data, we need to continue to aggregate data. I mean, we cannot just sit and say, well, we have the best database, the largest database, and this is going to be there. No. We need to continue to stay relevant and attractive for producers to continue engaged. We need to certify the quality of this data. We need to maintain and do proper integration of this data into the system so that we know that the data can be used properly, enable research and development, as I said already, and ensure that our services are still relevant. I mean, the type of evaluations, if you read this report, again, I'm sorry to go back to the report, but it's just a way for me to have a helper here. You will see a lot of things that have been implemented that you say, why are they telling me that? This is kind of an internal thing, you know, why are you telling me that you had to put another digit in the database because you would approach 100 million animal IDs, and if you didn't have another ID, another digit in the database, basically we will face something similar to the year 2000, in which the computers will stop because we didn't have a place for more animals, you know. Well, this is very internal. This is not something that you should be talking about in public and all that. But that shows how much work is constantly happening so that the system continues to be relevant, continues to offer the most efficient and the most, let's say, valuable products to the producers. And of course, we need to deliver the services, and delivery is, again, something that depends on our partners. And I don't know why we are seeing the same slide again, but one thing that is fundamental, and this is a picture of our team, and as you know, it's growing, and I already told you that in the beginning, and it's growing because things are getting more complex, and we need to address more things. Fortunately, we have the means to do that because the business model that has been put together by the board is very successful. And all these guys are working for you, working for this industry. I mean, you have here 16 PhDs. It's not so easy to get a company small like ours in which you have most of people with a doctorate degree. We have also 3 master degrees, and we have people that come from USDA, which are unique in their talents and their knowledge, that we were fortunate enough to be able to count with them, because they bring not only the history but all this knowledge that is important for us to have in this system. So basically, this is an organizational chart. You see how many different areas or departments that we have to take on in order to make, at the end of the day, evaluations available for the industry. So when we talk about processes, that's where I want to, how am I doing in time, okay? Okay, so I can take my time here. That's what I wanted to do. So this slide is a bit busy as well, but I wanted to show you that this is how our vision is, to what we need to do to achieve all those goals that we had from the community when we had the strategic plan. So obviously, CDCB, oh, sorry, I have to show there. CDCB governance is very important, and we have a board that is extremely committed and always pushing the staff to make sure that we have the answers that the sector needs. So the first step will be, okay, we need to aggregate data. So we need to continue to get data flowing into the system. So for that purpose, we said, well, it's not CDCB that has to deliver this message that people have to send data to the National Corporate Database. It's the whole collaboration, because the data doesn't come to CDCB. The data go to the HIAs, the data go to the RPCs, the data go to breed associations, and then this data go to the National Cooperative Database. So we need to work together. We need to have a unified or integrated message to go back to the producers and to say, look, we really appreciate that you are participating, and we want to do our best to continue to provide value back to you and continue to have your support. So we are working on that. Also, we need to have incentives. So we are talking about that. How our incentives are working right now. Right now, we have an incentive program for people that consume genomic products or consume genomic evaluations. Well, many people that send data to the database are not consuming genomic products. So we need to find another way to also include those producers in our incentives program. So we are talking about that because this is important. We need to show the community that we want them to participate. Then we need to see, well, the data we have that we're receiving is the basis, is really what makes us, let's say, what we are. But there are new needs all the time, and new data is necessary. So we need, for example, recently we added feed saved. Well, the effort to collect the data on feed intake and body weight and all that involved a lot of organizations, mostly research organizations, five universities and USDA, and it's a very expensive process. So this needs to be figured out, how we're going to get the data we need if that costs so much and requires so much investment in infrastructure, in people, you know. The same thing goes for lameness, mobility, hoof health. Now you're going to be hearing about milking speed. Milking speed also requires a special type of data to be calculated. We are engaged very much with the same group of universities also collecting now methane emissions. So all this new type of data requires a plan, requires an investment, requires a strategy. So this is really a key element of this process. Well, all this data that we want to bring in, and we already have brought in, it needs to be certified. Why it needs to be certified? We need to be sure that the data that we are using is reliable, it's accurate enough, and we understand what the data means. So this is a long process that, for example, Quality Certification Services, which is a subsidiary of National DHIA, has been doing in the phenotypic data. CDCB has been doing a big effort also in certifying genomic data. PDCA also certifies the data that goes into the breed associations. Because we need to be fair, we need to be really committed to our community, that whatever we deliver is based on data that is good. Well, if we want to have new types of data, if we want to have more data, we want to have data coming from different places, we need to also have a universal certification that includes other types of data providers. So this is a discussion that we are having too. It's a need that we have. The other thing is, once we have this data certified, it has to come into the system. Well, our system was built by USDA 30, 40 years ago, and it was based on one type of process. So the data would be formatted in certain file formats that most of you have heard of or have worked with. Well, we have to be more flexible going forward, because people are not going to take the time and investment, the resources to format the data for us. So we'll have to be flexible in receiving data in flexible formats. So this requires an investment in an infrastructure that we have in data ingestion as well. And then we have what we do with the data. So what I call the insight generation and delivery pipeline. Once we get the data in the database, what is going to be done? So we need a research and development, of course, and demand on that, and also changes at USDA, universities, and CDCB require that we have more internal research and development, and we share the burden of providing the solutions that the industry needs. So we're investing on that too. Deployment and validation process. I mean, we cannot minimize, we cannot underestimate the importance of testing before you send out something to the public. We need to be sure that the numbers make sense, the numbers match, the numbers are really what they should be. And this is an extremely expensive process, because we need to have people committed to do that all the time. So this is something that maybe most people don't realize, how much testing is going on before anything is released. But you do realize that sometimes we say, we are releasing this new feature in April, and then you receive another note, oops, we are not going to be able to release in April, we'll have to wait until August. Why? Because the tests told us, you're not ready, you know, and we have a lot of people from the industry helping us on looking at this data and saying, oh, this doesn't make sense to me, we have to double check. And this is really an important process. And then once we have that, then we implement and we provide the services. Well, guess what? These numbers that we generate, they have to reach the producers. How is that going to be? So we need to make sure that we have a delivery, publication, and distribution system that helps breed associations, AI companies, DRPCs to receive this data in an efficient way, nominators to receive this in an efficient way, and go back to the producers. And then we can diversify our portfolio. So we have a lot of actions going on for this process to take shape. So you'll be hearing about producer communication campaign right after me. Amy will be talking about this. So I'm not going to provide you more details. We also have a task force now that is dedicated to create a new data providers incentives program. So we are very excited because we think that this can make a difference going forward for all of us. And also, we have been working on our brand marks, so you also be listening to hearing more about that today. John Cole will talk about the research and development and the strategy that we have established for the short and long term. And we have this big project going on. We are working with this company, IOTA. They're helping us to create our ingestion system or data pipeline to receive data. This is in the final phase of the first version of this system. So we hope to have, beginning of next year, already a new machinery for the data ingestion. We also have now recently, all of us have been worried about cybersecurity, so CDCB is investing on bumping up our strategies, and our goal is to become ISO certified for cybersecurity, not because we want to have a title or anything like that, but because to achieve that, we will have to have everything in place. Also, we are seriously discussing internally how all the software we need to develop for all these steps that we were talking about, how we're going to do, where is this going to come from? So we are developing a solution or solutions to address those needs, because we are heavily dependent on this kind of software. So, and finally, you will be hearing from Asha, also from John, about new trades coming, they are in pipeline or in the research and development phase. So, takeaway. CDCB system continues to expand. In both scale, we are bigger. We have more people using our system. We have more numbers coming and all that. But in value, too. There are more people depending on our results. So we know the responsibility. So we know we're playing this important role in the dairy industry success. But this is only possible because of the dedication and engagement of thousands of dairy producers that contribute to the National Cooperative Database. National Cooperative Database is the key here. So to maintain the relevance of these services and also meet these evolving demands of the industry, we need to continue or continually modernize and make these processes what the moment needs, what the technology allows, what the challenge tells us that we have to go. So, as I said already a couple of times, the insight or the foresight of these visionaries that founded CDCB, and some of them are still in this room, established a sustainable business model and ensuring the necessary investments for us to keep this going. So I know a lot of people say, well, CDCB is getting a lot of resources, financial resources and all that. And the whole idea is that we have this to invest back in the system, and that's what we are going to do now. And some things were not done before because we were not ready. Now we're getting ready to do some of these investments that are so important for the industry. So this enables the industry to benefit from a pre-competitive support system. So this is what we are. We are here to work with everybody and make everybody look better using our results. So at the end of the day, all of us here want to empower the dairy producers and provide them the solutions they need. So together, We're not just preparing for the future, we are shaping the future. And this is what we are so privileged to be in the position that we are now. So, as Alan Kay said, the best way to predict the future is to invent it. So that's what we are certainly trying to do here. And thank you very much for everything you do for the support of this industry, and count on CDCB for anything that will empower their producers further. Thank you very much. You are going to have a very good program, a lot of information, and please ask your questions. Not to me, to the others, because certainly we are here to have a conversation. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Xiao. It is, let's see. Hopefully after listening to that presentation, you can see and hear the pride that the CDCB team truly takes in the work that we do and has accomplished over the past year, and feel inspired about the direction we are headed in the future. I also challenge you to meet the CDCB staff who are here in person at our meeting. I believe most of us are wearing some CDCB gear of some sort, but we would love to meet with our collaborators while we're all in this room together this morning. At this time, it is my privilege to invite Amy to play at church to the stage. Amy has worked on CDCB's communications and marketing efforts for roughly 7 years, through her role at Look East, a PR agency focused on agriculture. Previously, she worked for 20 years with the CRI, Gen X, and Ag Source groups, so she brings a holistic and informed view from that work in dairy records and AI. Amy will highlight and guide how we will better tell the story of the integrated value of CDCB and its collaborators. Amy, the stage is yours.
Thanks so much, Katie. And it's really a pleasure to be here. And I think we've had quite a bit of lead up, at least a year, to two of the topics that I'm really excited to present and introduce, launch for the very first time today. So you've heard at this same meeting last year from Chairperson Lindsay Warden about the strategic plan and the focus on collaborative communications. And Xiao has alluded to the work that's been done to bring that plan, that directive and guidance from the board of directors to life. So today it's my privilege to introduce to you some advancements in CDCB branding, including the Powered by Mark that you see some information on the table, and a new communication program and materials that will be coming on behalf of the entire industry to help for producers to understand exactly the value of the data that they're contributing to the national database. As Xiao so eloquently said, it is that level of producer contributions, the quality of the data that's coming into the National Cooperator Database that allows us to have the genetic evaluations, the research, the genetic improvement that's really considered the global standard. With it, I think it's very fitting that we're here at World Dairy Expo with the theme, the Golden Age, because having been, it's a bit humbling to hear Katie's introduction and the experience now that I've gained. But as we look at now the excitement and the adoption, the true utilization of genetic and reproductive technologies in new ways that perhaps we had only dreamed of when I started my career. So it's really a golden age in terms of the use of genetics and data for driving decisions, and how that's showing up in some real tangible results on dairy farms, not only here in the US, but worldwide. So today I will be introducing, just really painting a broad picture of the communication strategy and materials that you'll see coming out in early 2025. So we'll give a high level in this meeting. I do want to give a shout out with many of the communicators and outreach folks, marketers that are here today. We have a follow-up meeting at 2 o'clock this afternoon, which is open to any data providers, collaborators, communicators who want to better understand how they can use the CDCB branding and how they can be a part of this industry-wide communication effort to really elevate the understanding elevate the commitment to the integrated system that creates our research foundation and the genetic evaluations. We will also offer that same communicator focus session on October 17th in a virtual session for those that aren't here at World Dairy Expo. So please do see Katie or myself for any details about that meeting this afternoon or on October 17th. But here we are in the golden age, and it's only appropriate to note the tremendous legacy, the history, the century-plus work that's really made our legacy system and our status here in global dairy breeding possible. Many in the room could speak more eloquently than I about this history, but it's really empowering and humbling to see that it's that system, those organizations, the legacy that still exists today in this pre-competitive and collaborative space that has created CDCB and has now been stewarding the National Cooperator Database and providing the genetic evaluations now for 11 years after celebrating our 10th anniversary last year. So with this communication effort, we at CDCB, the team, we will be the first to acknowledge that we've been pretty humble. We're not as visible as other entities in the eyes of the dairy producers for whom we serve. And I think some of that humility really goes back to the culture and the spirit of the USDA, the Agile team, and others before that, really working as public servants for the good of the industry. And that same culture still extends today and is very visible. But what we're doing is elevating the producer recognition of what happens with the data that they contribute into the database, what benefits are received across the industry and for their individual herds, and how they can have confidence to continue to submit data, existing phenotypic data, future phenotypic data from potentially new and different data pipelines, and the genomic information that we know has been just an incredible surge. So some of the language and the visuals that I'll show today, this will be common knowledge for many of you, and many of you could speak and do often speak in greater detail. I'm trying to paint a picture for the concepts and the words that we'll use as we're elevating our communications with producer audiences. So when we're speaking about the National Cooperator Database, that's one of the industry's best kept secrets. It is the world's largest database devoted to dairy cattle performance and genetic improvement. There's been a very sophisticated process in place and implemented frequently to assure high quality data. Data in, data out, and quality is paramount. So it's this combination of the high volume of data and the quality and quality assurance that results in those increasingly reliable predictions of genetic merit, allowing dairy producers to continue to improve their herds. Zhao introduced the very important research and development innovation functions of the National Cooperator Database. And it's important that we remember and help producers remember that it is this database that fueled the research that allows us to have more tools than ever before to improve fertility, cow health, now feed efficiency with the feed saved, and in the future, genetic evaluations for methane reduction, and more to come. On farms, it's an easy story to tell when we talk about the improvement in genetics. The chart here is just one of many different ways we could look at it, but this indicates the improvement in milk yield since the 1960s with that top darker blue group being the improvement that's attributed to genetics, and then as well the improvements that have come through better and consistent management practices, adoption of new information. So we've seen simply a remarkable increase here in the US and abroad in dairy productivity through the combination of genetics, data that drives decisions, and continuous improvement in management. This is a really important story to tell, and we could look at a similar chart, couldn't we, if we were looking at components or fertility and other traits that we've been breeding for. But when I'm not working with CDCB, I have the pleasure of also working with some dairy customers, the retailers or restaurants who are delivering our product, milk and dairy products, to the end consumer. And the understanding of continuous improvement, the understanding of sustainability, increased productivity, making more with less, that's a very important story to tell to our customers, our dairy customers, and the consumers, because they do care about that, and we have the data that shows it. We have the proof. So as we're thinking about our increased communication and visibility with dairy producers, I can't think of a better way than to have fellow dairy producers talking and sharing the story. So we have a sample video for you. The first of what would be several, not all from Mr. Peck, but the first of videos where we'll have dairy producers helping to tell the story about the power of genetics and the power of this pre-competitive system and the genetic evaluation system that we have here in the US. So in a moment, the AV team will play this video. If you don't know Bill Peck, he is the immediate past chair of the Producer Advisory Committee that is stewarded by CDCB, a very important group in terms of providing grassroots input. And he's a recognized breeder. He and his family welcome stock farms from New York. So if you would please play the video, we'll hear what Mr. Peck has to say.
Well, a priority for the Council on Dairy Cattle Breeding, number one has to be, that people understand it is the gold standard. These are nonpartisan, non-interested parties that are taking this data and doing the research to try and better the industry, not only of Holsteins, but of all dairy breeds. So that's the most important thing, that we have an unbiased view, arbitrator per se, to help us to go in the right direction. Each of us as individual businesses, whether it be me as a farmer or those in the industry, have their own interests at heart. And we need somebody like the Council on Dairy Cattle Breeding kind of bringing all this information in and putting it together in a form that the dairyman can use in an unbiased form.
So there, Bill was talking about the charge for and the importance of the Council on Dairy Cattle Breeding. And as we work with other producers to tell the story of the integrated system, we'll work in more about the data that really fuels the system, the collaborative effort, the specific role that each and every of the organizations that are contributing data do provide along the way. As we approach this new communication strategy, we really find ourselves at an interesting intersection, and many of you are living it and driving it each day. So in this intersection, as we seek to really capture the potential, capture the opportunity, and continue this genetic improvement that we in the US are known for, we see this intersection between the legacy system, which is so highly regarded and so robust, empowers our evaluations, and also the integration of benefits of new technologies and new innovation. So we see this, it's a tremendous opportunity, and we're going to hear more about this from both Dr. Miles and Dr. Cole later. But the opportunity with new innovation and technologies to utilize data that can provide new traits, new decision tools that add value and provide solutions for farms. Because as we elevate our communications, we're going to lead with those benefits that are most tangible and most apparent for farms. So the milking speed evaluation, Dr. Miles will share more about later. Mobility and lameness work and helping that very important issue that farms are wrestling with. So there's opportunity, and we're also faced with challenges. There's a reality that some herds have focused less on traditional data sources and services when they invest in new technology like milking equipment and sensors, kind of chasing that shiny new thing that brings some great benefits. And perhaps the monthly testing or other more traditional services don't feel as robust and shiny. And that's the story we're going to help tell and remind of that value. Because when we look, all of us have in common our care and our passion for those genetic evaluations, the research and development. And so when we have less focus on those traditional services, less participation in the traditional services, there is an impact on the flow of phenotypic data into the National Cooperator Database. Yeah. So it really begs the question, and I've already answered it, haven't I? But have we been adequately sharing our story? Yeah. And so the work of the board of directors in the strategic planning, the input from the data providers at the year ago data workshop held in Chicago, input from the producer advisory committee, we know that we have an incredible opportunity to amp up our story. Kind of with those humble roots and that humility, we've been pretty shy about telling the story about the value of the integrated system here in the US and the National Dairy Database. So it's a great story, isn't it? Yeah. And you will start to see CDCB and our partners sharing more broadly about the value of the US system. So a bit of background, the specific input that came from the data providers, so DHI affiliates, DRPCs, breed associations, genomic nominators, all had gathered in August of 2023 in Chicago for an intense roll-up-your-sleeves 2-day workshop, really kind of digging into the opportunities and the use of our National Cooperator Database. And specific to the communications recommendation, here's a summary of the recommendations that came from that group of 100 plus people. First, enhance CDCB visibility and producer engagement. Have a unified collaborator message that is focused on pre-competitive collaboration and that value of data contributions. Target herds that are currently not contributing into the National Cooperator Database or who are not processed through the dairy records processing centers. And provide user-friendly information for producers. And you've heard me say a couple of times, leading with the benefits, the tangible results that are so important for dairy herds. It's so easy to lead with the features, to lead with the methodology, to lead with the processes, and all of that is super important, but that's a bit of like the engine, the back room. We're gonna lead forth with the producer benefits. So you might be wondering now, well, really, Amy, what's the plan here? So I'll paint a big picture, and then, as I said, with our communicator workshop today, we'll dive into more of the details and certainly welcome any comments today during the break or after the meeting. But anytime we start a communication plan or a communication strategy, we have to kind of acknowledge the reality that we're in. It's a great reality. There's also a few challenges. So we're operating in what could be a complex network because there's many different touch points on the farms in terms of the types of organizations and the specific companies that are working on the farms, each getting different pieces of data that come together into the National Cooperator Database. So there is some complexity that clutters our communication a bit. So we're going to work to cut through that together. There's also currently very diverse messages and messengers that go out to producers. Because what dairy farmers see are coming from the AI companies, the media magazines, the DHI reports, the information from the breed associations, the genomic results. So those are coming from several different organizations. As Zhao said, we're going to really work with those consistent messages. Like you hear, I'm not in real estate, but we hear location, 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 right? So in communication, it's repetition, repetition, repetition with consistent, clear messages. So today, one of the first steps we are introducing is the new Powered by CDCB logo. Does this replace the CDCB logo that you're seeing on folks' shirts or on the top of the agendas in the activity reports? No, that's still the organizational logo. The Powered by CDCB logo is to be used when the results from the National Cooperator Database, the genetic evaluations or research results, when those results are being shared and provided to dairy producers and dairy herds. And the reason, there's actually 5 reasons outlined on this card that's also on your tables, but the key reason is so producers who are essential to contributing that data, so that producers know when their genetic evaluations or other results are based on that data that they've contributed into the National Cooperator Database. It's transparent, it's empowering, it holds each of us accountable for the role that we play to provide quality data in and quality results back out that can truly help dairy producers. So powered by CDCB, you will begin to see out and about, and we're humbly asking for support and help from all of those folks who share and publish the genomic results, genetic evaluations, other results from the database to help us in leveraging the power of this integrated system by sharing and using the Powered by CDCB logo. More on that at 2. Our other effort that I'll introduce today is this coordinated promotion and set of materials that's going to emphasize the value of collaboration. So this communication strategy or communication campaign will become visible in early 2025. It is being led by CDCB with great support and leadership of the board of directors and the staff. And we're hoping for your enthusiastic participation as data providers and collaborators in the system, because there is really a win-win for all that are in the cooperation. As I said, we'll lead with the value to dairy herds. The lead story, the lead paragraph in the news will really be about the ability for producers and dairy herds to make more and more rapid dairy improvement through accurate genetic evaluations, data that drives decisions, and research that truly adds value to dairy herds. So just a few examples that you're familiar with, but we need to remind our main customer now and then. There are more genomic tests run every year on heifers. That widespread adoption, really worldwide, in genomic testing as a management, selection, culling tool in our female population. U.S. genetics continue to be valued worldwide. We've seen the surge year over year and the acceptance, the leadership of U.S. genetic evaluations. According to the latest report, 120 countries using U.S. genetics, importing U.S. genetics, 29 million units of U.S. dairy semen exported per year from the U.S. And this might be more new to some of you, and I think this is about the most exciting information I could see because it's future looking. This is from a survey that was conducted by Farm Journal in early 2024, just a few short months ago. And they conducted a survey with more than 200 dairy producers, widespread diversity of regions, herd size, management styles. And they have a 24-page report with many different results. It's fascinating reading if you want to Google and download it. Farm Journal, State of U.S. Dairy. But one question in particular really stood out at me. And the question that Farm Journal asked of these dairy producers is, where do you expect to make financial investments in your dairy operation in the next 3 to 5 years? And they had a list of at least 15 different options, and producers could select more than one. So ranking third in the results was this. It's just music to my ears. Producers plan to make genetics and genomic testing investments because they want to improve their herd. 35% of respondents said genetics and genomic testing is an area they plan to make financial investments in the next 5-year forecast. There were also several high-ranking responses, including data for decision-making, data analytics, monitoring and analyzing, improving health, able to monitor and detect health disorders or issues, make better decisions. So for those of us in our room and the part of the industry that we serve, this is really exciting. It's the golden age for genetics and genomics. So as we're thinking through our communication strategy and our campaign, we've also taken a step back to ensure that we have a really fine understanding of what dairy producers see as value in our integrated system in the results from the National Cooperator Database. It's easy to think we have a lot of experience. We've been talking about this for years, but we know what assumptions can do as well. So in any process in our communication strategy, we start with a pretty robust discovery to ensure that we're really kind of hearing from our target audience, in this case, U.S. dairy producers. We're really hearing what's on their mind and what's important to them. So over the past several months, here's a summary of the discovery that our communication team has been doing, all geared to answer the question, what do producers here in the U.S. value about the integrated system? So we've surmised and reviewed existing input from the board of directors with the strategic plan, that data provider workshop I mentioned that was held in August 2023, a quantitative producer survey that was also executed in 2023. Then we've done a series of interviews with dairy producers. And in those interviews, we were really focused on producers that are no longer contributing data into the database. Because we have a better sense as to those who are contributing data and why they're so invested and passionate and continue to do that. But we didn't have as good of a sense about those who have moved to other forms of data or have moved away from our integrated system. So with the support of many DHI affiliates around the country, we were able to hear directly and have one-on-one interviews with producers to really understand their decision making. How do they evaluate return on investment as they're looking at individual cow performance? You know, what's mission critical to them, and using that base of information to understand how we can communicate better and serve their needs that we better understand. We've also done a review of the different materials that are producer-facing and external materials that are currently used around the collaborators and the system to really understand what are the channels that are reaching producers today. You know, how can we work together in this repetition, and consistent call to action in terms of messaging. And we've done, with the help of the CDCB team and technology, really looking at the existing makeup of the National Cooperator Database. What types of herds are contributing into the system now? What are those demographics? And how do they compare to the national dairy demographics in terms of regions, location, herd size, and other demographic stats? That also gives us some baselines as we approach this reinvigorated communication and call for submissions of data, that it helps us to establish some baselines. Because just like dairy producers are measuring performance, we're going to be measuring performance of our materials and communication as well. We're thankful to the members of the Producer Advisory Committee. I expect a couple of them are in the audience today, but they, along with the Board of Directors, have been involved in kind of pressure testing our ideas and providing input. You know, are the communication messages and channels where we plan to meet people, are those on pace? Yeah. So our focus will be, for 2025, our focus will be on providing awareness of the integrated system and working to integrate additional phenotypic records into the database. So information that was provided by National DHIA at their March annual meeting. At that time, there were 3.9 million cows on DHI that provide records into the database. There's an additional 1.5 million cows that go through DHI field service, certified meters, certified labs, but their data is returned directly to the farm and it does not come into the database. So is this an opportunity to boost the phenotypic information in the database? And just as a level set for those that may be less familiar, that's based on about 9.3 cows milking in the US. So today we are introducing a multi-phase communication plan with phase 1 becoming visible in early 2025. We'll spend the next couple of months working with collaborators, getting the materials ready, and really being ready for a launch after the holidays, after inauguration, when folks are going to be more in tune, we expect, to new things. This is also, if you heard the nuances from Zhao's presentation, this will also be in alignment with a few other strategic activities. One, you've heard that there's a group working on data incentives. And so we see a second phase of this campaign would run in parallel with any changes or differences in the incentive program. I'm also aware, as many of you would be, that there's work being done with a herd portal, a new tool that DHI affiliates, NDHIA, CDCB, and others, and this herd portal will be a tool that producers can more easily and conveniently share, understand who's receiving their data, and designate data to different parties. So these materials can be used in parallel with the launch of that herd portal. So our 2025 phase 1 will really be focused on awareness of the current system, the current benefits, and increasing data from among that 1.5 million cows where there is DHI testing but not submission into the National Cooperator Database. And you see some of those subsets. If you're sitting there wondering, how does this impact me? How can I be involved? Getting involved and working with CDCB in terms of increasing data from those groups that are listed there is a fine place to start, and we'll talk more about that. In a broad picture of the communication plan, we break a communication plan into 4 different elements. First of all, the messages or the statements. So we ask and answer questions like, what topics matter to producers? What do we want producers to better understand about the database and our integrated system? What words and phrases will we use consistently? So we are developing a message blueprint, we call it, and that will be accessible to all data collaborators, data providers, to be able to use those consistent, similar messages time and time again. There's a creative element to every communication campaign. So how does our design attract attention, be memorable, and be consistent? Repetition, repetition, repetition. Because we know that dairy producers and really everyone in society is so inundated with messages. And so how do we cut through the clutter and have something that's tangible and relevant? Content is a huge part of any communication strategy, and it's that combination of the messages, the statements, and the creative. And it answers the question, what format are messages delivered? So we are prepared to be providing producer testimonials, as I shared with the one from Bill Peck, the video. Also use of animated videos and infographics. Those are both creative tools that really help us to gradually introduce a complicated process or a more complex network like we have. So introduce those complex topics more gradually and in a fun way that keeps attention. There'll be articles, advertorials, FAQs, all geared and leading with the producer benefits. And then finally, delivery. Once we have this content, the messages and attractive design, how do we amplify our content to dairy producers? So most of the time, we will look at a four-prong content delivery strategy. Your information in media. There's paid media, pay to play. So when you'll see those advertisements pop up in a newsletter or in banners, or when you're reading through Progressive Dairy or Hordes Dairyman or the Farm Journal publications, the breed publications, paid advertising and paid media. It's becoming more and more of a thing now in our digital world, and it gives us some very good metrics to be able to understand the performance of our communication. And then shared content. And that's where we'll be working with the communicators and outreach folks around the industry messages. In our creative elements, we're choosing to lead with a red, white, and blue. Surmise our reasoning for that. And so really kind of playing up the reputation, the high regard for the U.S. system. And it'll be complementary with many of the organizations involved. Our slogan, which has been tested by the Producer Advisory Committee and others, our slogan will be Data Fuels Genetic Improvement. Producers tell us they like that because it's tangible, it's action-oriented. We can include words like steers, drives, powered. You know, that all feels like we're putting our future into our hands. So when we talk about the integrated system, we'll start a conversation something like this. Dairy farmers continuously improve their herds through innovation. Dairy farmers continuously improve their herds through innovation, management, and genetics. Genetic improvement has been powered by the century-long partnership of producers and many organizations that collect and transmit quality farm data into the National Cooperator Database. U.S. genetic evaluations are the global standard, data-driven, future-focused, increasingly accurate, and unbiased. When farms provide cow and herd data to the national database, they are fueling genetic improvement for generations to come. So it's a top-line message. But any producer I know is going to have some follow-up questions. And that's where we're going to provide more information, articles, advertorials, and such that answer questions like this. What is the National Cooperator Database? How do dairy farms benefit from this asset, from the database? What specific research or management tools have resulted from this collaborative database? How will it help us in the future? What are you working on now? How does the data get from my farm into the evaluations? I tell you, when my colleague Sherry and I did interviews, we heard a lot of producers who were saying, I don't really know where my data goes after it leaves my farm. How do I know if my data is going into the National Cooperator Database? What are the benefits to me and my farm to contribute data? How exactly is it used? Who has access to it? And why should I trust you? Why should I trust how you're using it? And then another question that commonly came up in our interviews is, I'm not sure I understand why we need the phenotypic data anyway. When we're using genomics, it seems all about genomics these days. So that's an important part of the story and the answers that we'll provide. We'll have a content hub that will be available online for all data partners and providers to be able to access the messages, the videos, the infographics, social media posts, kind of a one-stop shop, so you can easily share those materials. So what's next? Early 2025, you'll begin to see more visibility with data fuels genetic improvement. In the meantime, we'll be working on that content that I described and visiting with many of you about how you can participate, because this truly is a team effort, and I sincerely believe there's a win-win for many of the organizations in this room as we share consistent messages. So how can you participate in this industry-wide effort? For the producers in the room, share with your fellow producers about the power of data and the power of the National Cooperator Database. For the data providers and collaborators, we'd ask you to consider a self-audit of your producer-facing materials. Do you currently have a clear connection between your services and the National Cooperator Database? Are you answering that question that producers have? Is what happens with their data next? Where does it go? How are you describing that? We know that a lot of the communication happens on the farm eyeball to eyeball. So providing tools and materials for field services staff to describe directly to producers how their data is used and the value of the integrated system would be a very helpful initiative. And we'll be asking many of you to partner in the programs to help identify and recruit additional producers who may be using some of the services, but they're not currently submitting their data into the National Cooperator Database. And as I alluded to before, we'll be asking you to share new materials, promotions on your channels in your 2025 content plans and communications. For those that use the results from the National Cooperator Database, the genetic evaluations, genomics, and other results, we ask you to add the new Powered by mark or text. Sometimes we know those, like those sire pages or pedigrees are really information heavy, and you might not be able to add a logo on there, but let's acknowledge with a line of text the Powered by CDCB. So we're giving producers and breeders transparency when the National Cooperator Database is the source of those results. So in summary, the integrated value proposition, our goals, which you'll see coming visible early next year, are to clearly and consistently share the value of what so many in this room and across the industry are doing. Increasing producer data contributions, some specific phenotypic data into the Cooperator Database, and ultimately ensuring the future innovation and genetic innovation that we in the US are known for generations to come. So I suspect we might be at time for our milk break. I'd be happy to take any questions individually or after the meeting. And again, for those in outreach and communications, we hope to visit with you this afternoon. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Amy. Appreciate it. We are going to take a break right now. Since we got started a little late this morning, we are going to get back on time with this break. So 9:45, we are going to start our program again with our producer panel. So feel free to help yourself to the refreshments in the middle room, have those fun conversations, grab a restroom break, and we'll meet back here at 9:45. Thank you.
Or turn it, fix it up strong, and back so you feel good on. Cut 'em all short, roll it up tight, let it up the night. Drop the top down on the pavement. Where you wind is where the party's at. Break the fight, but come it up, and know it back. Your season is getting out to the sunshine. To the eyes and flow to a big hand. To the top, stay pop in the tanker. As a big here over my mind. She's a little bit leaves and for things. Standing her heart to the sun. She's seeing you are just a drunken song. It's falling in her. It's to the top. While there's still time. Spraying sweet, targeting permanently. Parking way back, fogging on, singing what? Radio, spit from a single cab. She looks so good on her silver tap, hanging on. It's by the river, that's a memory that'll when you look back, takes the time to the sunshine. To the eyes and flow to obey the air. To the top, stay pop in the tail. It's a big girl, oh my. She's a little seriously leaves and for things. Stealing your heart to the sun. And she's seeing just a drunken song. It's falling in her. Into the good time. While it's in time. Drop down the top down, honey, yeah. Wherever you wind up's where the party's at. Break out the bottle of the 40 black and don't look back, cause this is a good time. To the sunset, it's in the eyes and flow to a big air. To the top, in the tangle, it's a big air, oh my. She's a little bit leaves and for things. Stealing her heart to the sun. And she's seeing you are just a drunk song. It's falling in her eyes. It's a good time. It's a good time. To the moonshine. In the blue. Time. It's a good time. There's Daddy on his John Deere, brand new 96. Beside me and Bandit, playing fetch when I was a kid. I saved the date, best day of my best buddy's life. Anybody else could walk on by and not blink an eye. 'Cause they're just pictures hanging side by side. Forgotten memories from another time. Just the places that I've been before. Couple magnets, recipes, and Polaroids. Yeah, but that's my life on the refrigerator door. My first day of kindergarten when I was 5 years old. A postcard that my cousin sent from Cancun, Mexico. A list of what mama needs from the IGA today. Just one small part of the work of art I get for in the day. With all those pictures hanging side by side, forgotten memories from another time. And places that I can't be before. Couple maps, recipes, and Polaroids. Yeah, but that's my life on the freeway. As life flies by, it spins on to the side. Till it's cover top to bottom with the best days of your life. And all those pictures hanging side by side. Forgotten memories from another time. And places that you can't be before. Couple maps, recipes, and Polaroids. Yeah, but that's all right. It's on the refrigerator. On the refrigerator. You say them city boys living in those high condos. On the left, you feel low. Those little smoke glass fancy cars so go fast, but never got to where you wanted to go. All you ever own is a note. See, Chevy took the cut. You fall in love on the bench seat. Don't mind me, I'm just talking Tennessee. Girl, don't blame me if I slip and call you baby. That's just my way of letting the lady know she's working all day. There I go, letting my Southside soul rescue whisper low. Little sweet nothing southern is I'm jacking 7 sipping, hoping that you're digging on me. Talk of Tennessee. You say the street lights only ever let you see the skyline. It's been a long time since the Milky Way, Jupiter and Venus took your breath away. You like it taking late, working on me. There I go, letting my Southside soul rescue whisper low. Little sweet nothing southern is I'm jacking 7 sipping, hoping that you're digging on me. Talking Tennessee. There I go, letting my Southside soul rescue whisper low. Little sweet nothing southern is I'm jacking 7 sipping, hoping that you're digging on me. Talking Tennessee. Talking Tennessee. Yeah. top of CDCB. Yeah, you used to talk about getting even further south, somewhere where the summer lasted all year round. Probably got a big old diamond on your hand right now. Maybe a baby or a couple by now. Long driveway to a big white house. But I sure get about that face to see. And we, we, since we're 7 songs of cold, southern comfort. We don't just don't know. Back then you used to everything said, six on me, and then it make you sad. No, that was 7 songs ago. Yeah, I bet your dad's so proud. How's a little girl turned out? Think she ties the bullet of a good old boy like me. So I still go drinking same friends on Friday. Bought a few acres, couple roads on the highway. Guess you never saw things my way anyway. But I good way to beginning. Found again about that face to see. And we since was 7 songs of cold southern comfort. What we done just younger, no. Back then you used to say, cause it never make you sad enough. And it was 7 songs, 7 songs ago, 7 songs ago. You got when you're thinking, find yourself thinking about that boy from East Tennessee. And we still sing 7 songs of cold southern comfort. We don't just younger, no. Back then you said all my sets ago with me, and they never make you sad. No, it was 7 songs ago. 7 songs ago. 7 songs ago. We were just river kids, picking up stones like David did, watching them long backs break off a freight train bridge. We went to church in a Detroit car. Our daddies drank draft at the local bar with an aching back just like old granddad did. And we like cold cake beer, fixing up trucks, old bird dogs in the water we love. Maxwell had steaming out of a coffee cup. We say our prayers, send them to the sky. Bust off Maxwell and get back here. To California up there in the it's like blue collar boy. Where the white paint peeling off a picket fence, rust stains covering the craftsman ranch. When the sun's coming, you can bet we're clocking in. Cash your paycheck today, breaking do it again. Can't figure fixing up trucks. Old bird dogs and the woman we love. Maxwell has seen out of a coffee cup. We sang our prayers, sing to the sky. Bust off and sparing it back there. To California, up to Illinois. It's just like it's blue collar. Well, boots and all that's the wind behind the stars is trying to sing away. Like cold cake beer, fixing up trucks, old bird dogs and the woman we love. Maxwell has steaming out of a coffee cup. We sing our prayers, sing to the sky. Bust up like it's very deep by to California, up to Illinois. It is God's life. It is God's life. Blue collar boy, blue collar boy. Screamed into the driveway with my foot stuck on the gas. Had the crown mixed up in a Dixie cup when she hopped into the can. She said, "Oh, what you got in store? What we getting into tonight?" Hell, I don't care. It ain't here nor there, just as long as you're by my side. Whether she's sitting shotgun with her hair done, or with the seat sling back and the radio on the back streets, in the back seat. Those baby blue eyes still back at me, whether it's in park or it's in drive. I love the way she rides. So we hit that ground running, threw a caution to the wind. And it wasn't long for that drink was gone, and she was shaking that ice again. She said, "Find somewhere dark we can park and put a hurting on this bottle." So we said goodnight to the city lights, kicking it in full throttle. Whether she's sitting shotgun with her hair done, with the seat sling back in the radio on the back streets, in the back seat. Those baby blue eyes still back at me, whether it's in the park or it's in the drive. They see when the seat sing shotgun with your hand up, the seat sling in the radio, the back streets in the back seat. Those baby blue eyes still back at me, whether it's in park or it's in the drive. Oh, the way she rides, the way she rides, the way she rides. Yeah, yeah, the way she rides.
Baby, lay on back and relax. Kick your pretty feet up on my dash. No need to go nowhere fast. Let's enjoy right here where we at. Who knows where this road is supposed to lead? We got nothing but time. As long as you're right here next to me, everything's gonna be alright. If it's meant to be, it'll be, it'll be. Baby, just let it be. If it's meant to be, it'll be, it'll be. Baby, just let it be. So won't you ride ride with me, see where this thing goes. If it's meant to be, it'll be, it'll be. Baby, if it's meant to be. I don't mean to be so uptight, but my heart's been hurt a couple times by a couple guys that didn't treat me right. Ain't gonna lie, ain't gonna lie. Cause I'm tired of the fake love. Show me what you're made of. Boy, make me believe. Hold up, girl, don't you know you're beautiful? And it's easy to see. If it's meant to be, it'll be, it'll be. Baby, just let it be. If it's meant to be, it'll be, it'll be. Baby, just let it be. So won't you ride with me, ride with me, see where this thing goes. If it's meant to be, it'll be, it'll be. It's meant to be. So come on, ride with me, ride with me, see where it goes. So come on, ride with me, ride with me. We don't, baby, we don't. We will, baby, we won't. But it is meant to be. No, it's meant to be. No, baby, no, come on. Let's go. Right? See where it's meant to be. No, baby, if it's meant to be, it'll be. If it's meant to be, it'll be. It'll be. If it's meant to be.
I can still see your blue sky, blue eyes hanging on a mango kiss. Hear the waves and the breeze in the Joshua trees. It's just about as good as it gets. Taste the salt on the wind, feel the sand on your skin, and the wild in the wind, like I'm right there again. From Mexico, holding on to you. It's a long time road. Well, I ain't boots for us. I ain't paid the cents, but I can't seem to let it go. There was a shine in the dark, a flame from a spot in a line in the Pacific Coast. Under a boat, over Mexico. Left, I was kicking myself 'cause I knew I should stay. Still tequila up drunk, us waking up under the Cabo palm leaf shade. It's crazy, I know, but I'd give anything to go to you and me on the coast in the midnight road.
We are nearing 9:45. If you can start making your way back to your seats, we will get started again here shortly with the producer panel.
I with the Pacific Coast. It's the salt on the rain, feel the sand on your skin, and the wild in the wind, like I'm right there again. Oh, over Mexico, Mexico, over here, over here. It's a long time, it's a long time. Whatever the first words, I ain't there to sense, but I can't seem to let it go. There was a shine in the dark, the flame from a spark, and the light in the Pacific Coast. Under Mexico. Over Mexico.
Got lots of bars around this town. They got cold beer, yeah, and they got crown.
All right,
Got
everyone.
the all nights in the
You
window.
can please find your seats. We are going to get started again.
Thinking they got gang.
And welcome back from the break for those of you who've been with us since the start of the meeting this morning, but also a welcome to anyone who did join us over this little refreshment break. It's great to have you here in the Tanbark with us. I am Katie Schmidt. I'm the outreach specialist for CDCB. I realized I started talking this morning and I never introduced myself. So that is my connection up here. And it is my privilege to moderate this panel discussion with our three incredible producers this morning. Joining us on the stage to my immediate left is Matt Hendel with Hendel Farms in Caledonia, Minnesota. Next to him is Skylar Grecky from Triple G Dairy in Buckeye, Arizona. And then on the far end, we have Jordan Matthews with Rosie Lane Holsteins here in Wisconsin over in Watertown. We do have a list of questions prepared to get our conversation started this morning, but we certainly welcome audience participation and questions as well. So feel free to submit those using that Slido app. Again, the QR code is on your tables for submitting those questions. I have my phone. We'll watch those and get them asked to the guide as well. Or you are, of course, welcome to raise your hand and we'll find you a microphone so you can ask. But to get us started, gentlemen, let's get to know you all a little bit better. So can you talk us through background and what the farm looks like? And Matt, we're going to start with you.
I knew sitting next to you would be a problem right off the bat.
Always.
Anyway, I really appreciate Katie's work with the council as the outreach specialist. Have a lot of contact with her being on the producer advisory committee, and really happy to work with her again here today. Give you a little background on our operation. My great-grandfather immigrated from Luxembourg in 1869, and I'm the fourth generation, and my daughter Lauren is hopefully the next fifth generation, helping me with a lot of day-to-day management of the farm in addition to working for Select Sires. And we had 35 brown Swiss since about 1922, and I have records in my file cabinet from 1929 and 1928, and we've been on continuous tests since World War II, so about over 75 years, a continuous DHI test. And so I was always interested in data, looking back at the history of the farm and these books and understanding the importance of record keeping, and also had a chance to work with DHI in Minnesota when I was in college. So I've always had a strong interest in data. We currently have about 400 cows. 30 of them are registered brown Swiss, and we enjoy the opportunity working with international buyers on our genetics in both breeds.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that intro, Skylar. Let's pass it to you.
I'm Skylar. It's a pleasure to be here. I am originally from the Midwest and moved out to Arizona about 5-6 years ago. I work for the Ging family, Triple G Dairy. That dairy has been in Arizona since the mid-1950s. They've helped to kind of develop the Arizona dairy industry. They're currently milking anywhere from 5,000 to 6,000, just depending on what the time of the year is in the Arizona herds. And it's a very progressive herd, very progressive owners, and so we're looking to expand and better the dairy cows every day.
Wonderful, thank you. And last but not least, Jordan.
I'm Jordan Matthews, partner at Rosie Lane Holsteins. We're, I guess, the local person here. We're just right down the road, 30 miles. A little bit about us. The Holterman family started our farm in Watertown in the early 60s. They moved from Milwaukee to milk cows, a little more rural area. Since then, we've evolved to a multi-family partnership that involves the Holtermans, myself, Tim Strobel, and then Sam Peets, our newest partner. So a unique non-family related partnership there. Where we are today, we milk just shy of 1,800 cows on 2 locations. Kind of all the chaos, we say, is at our home location in Watertown with our dry cows and what have you. And we're experimenting in the last couple of years with a remote site that's about 50 miles away where we milk some cows as well.
Perfect. Well, with that, our title obviously means that we're going to talk about data use both on the farm as well as off the farm a little bit. So let's talk about the data collection that's happening at your guys' herds. What does that look like? What type of information are you gathering? What summary systems are you using today? And Jordan, let's go back to you.
As far as data on a daily basis, so we have a lot of cow information that comes into, we use Bovasync. So anytime we're having handling of cows, touching cows, that data will go into there. On our Watertown farm, we do have Affimilk system. So we do have milk weights, conductivity, milk flow rates, et cetera on that. And we use that for different sorting mechanisms for our cows. We do have rumination collars that we've started to experiment with in Watertown, and that's the Affi systems. Feeding softwares on both farms, 2 different ones. We have a new, I think it's called FeedLink. It's the TMR tracker, new on cloud-based. So we're doing some demos with that, and then Feed Supervisor. I think are kind of the main ones that we use on a daily basis, and then we'll get into it. I think maybe possibly a little later the joys of trying to get those all to integrate and get useful data out of them all.
You are correct. That is where we were headed with this conversation. Skylar, do you want to take that next?
Yeah, so being larger dairies in the Mid-Southwest there, a lot of what we do is data driven. We don't work hand in hand on individual cows as much as we'd like to. We run a dairy comp system. Everything that happens to every cow every day is entered in on that in a detailed manner. Herd health wise, we have Allflex collars that collect activity and rumination. We make breeding decisions off of that. We make health decisions off of that. And then on top of that, we have a cattle eye system that detects lameness as cows come out of the parlor. We use that in a way to keep our guys from, instead of looking for cows, they're working on cows. A little bit more labor efficient that way and catching cows sooner. As a feed, we're using the Milk One system. We're using that to collect intakes, to make loads. And then on top of that, we're doing the genomics, collecting data on calves as they come in. That way we can make decisions on breeding, on sales, on embryos, anything like that. So.
Perfect. And we'll come back to the cattle eye piece because we are working on some research with you with that project or with that program. So we'll come back to that. Matt, do you want to go?
We basically work with DMRS and PC Dart, and they just implemented a new cow compass, which I can use on my iPhone, which is really, really useful. And the changes, turning 60 years old today, I feel like I'm a little, technically challenged. But with the new programs that are introduced, the help is there. You just have to reach out And so with a 400 cow dairy, we haven't implemented as many the technologies that maybe we'd like to use, but really appreciate their use with getting that data into the system. But one thing I've learned that you really have to keep active and search out and find ways to use PC Dart, because you can't invent everything in your head on how to use it. So first of all, I counted on my wife to train me to use it. And then once I get comfortable with it, then I can use it. And then similar with other programs that we use, but Holstein USA with the ID is part of our system. We have an auto calf feeder that we use the tagging system for that. And, ID is critical to our system working, visual ID, because we don't have as much computer technology and in auto readers and things. So my management team, we need to keep those tags, the visible ID, and then having that RFID with part of our system is important also.
I feel like I have to say happy birthday. We won't sing it. I'll just say it and wish you a happy birthday, Matt. Thank you for taking time to be a part of this on your special day. But obviously we are at World Dairy Expo. There's technology everywhere here in the trade show, and you guys have it on your farms. But are you looking for new pieces of data technology and data collection systems for your farms, or you feel like you kind of have what you need today? Whoever has an answer is welcome to go.
Well, I can start with that, as it kind of leads into what I was last discussing, but I really would like to implement like Cow Manager, because as labor changes, we need to start implementing, the low cost, the things that we need to implement have to show value quickly, and I feel like Cow Manager can help me identify sick cows easier, breedings easier, with a little less, in the cost level for the size herd we're at. You always have to compare costs to reward balances. So that's something I'm interested in today.
Awesome, gentlemen. Anything on your end?
I mean, for us, it's kind of figuring out the basics. So we have all this software, and nothing's cheap these days. So you spread it out on a cow per head basis, but we figure out the basics of what this system can do for us. Now it's figuring out what more can the system do. Can we get labor efficiency out of it? Can we find things sooner on cows' heats, sick cows? Can we fix problems sooner so we don't have huge issues? It's basically how can we get more efficient and more profitable out of the systems that we're currently using. And then on top of that, what new is coming out? It's going to things like World Dairy to see what people are developing and what else we may be interested in, what goals we have that maybe a system can help us achieve. So,
Perfect, Jordan.
Yeah, I'd back what Skylar said there a little bit. We have some technology on our farm already, and it's maybe a little more than we can handle some days. So really making sure we understand what we have. Are we using that data to the best of our ability, and or are we looking at the wrong things? We have had some talks about how can we get some AI in the background to start analyzing some of that data and giving us better predictions of what the future of some of these cows will do. I think there's some camera technology out there. I have an example that I think you're going to talk about that's interesting, and how do we have a non-biased eye looking at things instead of continually training for something that sometimes we're just not very good at. So that's what we're looking at.
Yeah, and you guys started to touch on this, both of you on the end there, about there's so much data happening, and how do you find what you need, and how do you make it into a useful daily tool? So how are you finding, is it data points or is it trends, but how are you finding that information that makes the greatest impact in your herds? Or what are you looking at? Maybe that's the better question.
I guess I go back to the goals. I mean, we know what the issues are on the dairy, and what can we do to achieve those issues. So the data, we're picking certain points in that data and saying, okay, this is what's reading, what we're seeing out of the cows. How can we fix that? What kind of protocols do we need to put in place? Going back to the main, like you were saying, what's nice about the AI and everything is there's no bias. My guys can't say, oh, we have this many cows that we have to trim anyway today. We'll just skip that one today, even though she needs it. No, this is your list. This is what you have to work on. It needs done before they milk again, and that's it. But basically setting goals and using whatever data points are in that subject of the goal in order to achieve something.
Perfect. Jordan, Matt, anything to add on this one? Okay. We've got more questions here, but I also want to say there are some coming in from the audience. I'm going to go a little off the plan that we had talked about to ask a question from one of our audience members. What do you think are the barriers to inputting quality phenotypic data, and how can the industry make it easier for farmers? Oh, yeah. Matt, do you have a comment first? Okay. I will repeat. What do you think are the barriers to inputting quality phenotypic data, and how can the industry make it easier for farmers?
I think the barrier is the knowledge of where to put the data. So a good example I have is my hoof trimmer always gives me a sheet of what he trimmed and which feet were a particular problem, and I just kept them on a clipboard and refer back to them, never entering them. Well, didn't realize how important, if those trimming events are entered, we have good solid data. I can look back, now I look back on my PC Dart and I can see, well, we trimmed her 3 months ago, we better hold off, we don't want to retrim her. But I can see there's certain cows that are getting trimmed 3 times a year. Some cows don't get trimmed at all in a year, and that data is really useful to the database for estimating, trimming events. That's another expense that we can reduce. But you got to enter it. You got to know where to enter it. And I think my goal is talking here today is that getting our records processing centers that are computing our data to do a more efficient job of letting, I think the word is out, but we got to get it further out and get data collected. And that's just an example.
I just think a very similar example on our farm. I think there's too many times of today where, let's just keep going with hoof trimming, right? So we want to start analyzing data today, but of the year past, we haven't entered, what claw was it on, let's say on a hoof trim event. We just said she got a wrap on her rear left foot. I think we need to know why we're entering that data. What's the reason? Otherwise, we really struggle on our farm. We have enough stuff to do. There's no one that's putting in less hours. So we really have to have a good, strong reason, especially for the data inputters of why are we doing this? What's the end goal? Because otherwise it just becomes more data. And I think we have enough of that already if we don't have a use for it.
Skylar, anything to add, or are you okay on this one? Okay. We've started to talk a little bit about the data quality and entering good data too. So how are you training your teams at home to do that so that that data in your systems and then also hopefully is flowing into the National Cooperative Database is good quality data? What does that training look like?
I would say on our farm, there's limited people that get access to entering data. So that might be, 3 or 4 key people. And then we are trying to, as much as possible, have prescribed ways to enter things. There's not 6 different ways to enter a hoof trim. It's A or B option. Whereas I think before it was, a blank sheet and you could write in whatever you want. And that gets a little messy when you're trying to analyze things. So I'd say continually we're looking at each event that we have. How can we keep those a little more defined and have one of 3 options, let's say, instead of a wide open array.
And I agree with that. I mean, we're the same way. We have a small amount of people that are able to enter data enter events and details about what goes on throughout the day. I myself am the primary one that does it, and when I'm gone, I have to have somebody that can just click. Okay, this is what it is. He doesn't have to type in a certain thing. I know what the key things that happen on the dairy are. I customize those events, and so then he has options instead of having to put in something differently than the way I would do it. I think the main thing is you have a consistent entry of data. You don't have 3 different people putting in 3 different things on the same event.
Yeah, that consistency part of data quality. Yeah, Matt, anything to add? Okay, let's talk a little bit about the integration part of it all. Then the different systems you're working with. How are you managing that integration? Are you going to each of the different systems to find the information you're looking for, or have you found a nice tool, or is there something that needs to be developed to help producers with that data integration? Go for it, Skylar.
For us, I mean, a lot of our stuff runs through Dairy Comp. I make all of my reports. I filter everything through Dairy Comp, and we've gotten to the point too where if a system doesn't integrate with Dairy Comp, then we kind of turn them away. And that was actually something that went with Cataly, is they had a hard time integrating with Dairy Comp. And I just told them, I said, I can't look at 3 or 4 different systems in a day with 4,000 to 5,000 different data points. I need one thing. I need to be able to set those filters and work out the kinks myself instead of have to get trained up on a new system. So we just kind of filter all that data through what we want to see on Dairy Comp.
It's one of your like selection criteria for new technology, basically. Yeah, Jordan.
I would say we're opposite of that. We're on the struggle bus, and we just keep adding monitors to our computer setup. So we just have one open on every single monitor, and you get dizzy looking at them. So don't follow our example there.
Do you have a solution in sight?
We ask questions, and I don't know, they all say like, yeah, we're going to work on that. And you ask them 6 months later, how's progress? And still working on it.
Fair enough. It does take some time, but hopefully there's progress that can be implemented soon. Matt, anything to add?
Just that you need bigger monitors sometimes. Somebody came up to my office last week and they go, man, you got to get a monitor that's bigger than that.
And then you can upgrade and get more and more and more. There's a question from our audience about connectivity of just systems that are cloud-based and Wi-Fi like capable and capacity within farms. Do you guys struggle with that at all? Is that an issue that you have in like broadband width to be able to support cloud-based systems?
We don't, just because we rent the tower space for our internet company. So we have some of the best internet in the valley.
That was smart. That was well done. Jordan, Matt, any issues?
We have a very similar situation. Our grain leg is the backup internet source for our area, for our internet provider. So we're good.
Okay, I think we found our solution. Just rent some ground for the backup internet. This is great. There's a question in here from a audience member. Management decisions are you making using individual cow heifer genetic data? So let's think genomic evaluations that are coming back.
Can you repeat that again,
Yeah.
please?
What management decisions are you making using individual cow or heifer genetic data?
Genomic data?
Let's call it genomic data.
So using genomic data on females, I find that generally on the basic population, it follows pretty closely to the bulls that I use. So I don't get as many outliers, plus or minus, if I'm doing a very good job of selecting the bulls. So on the higher end, of course, it's critical to match up the most positive animals that I want to work with. Okay, plus marketing of them. But but you have to use the data with your eye. So if, like, say you have an animal that's had a pneumonia problem, and you look back in your data, she's been treated repeatedly. She could be the highest genomic animal in your herd, but it's a mute point because of her history. Bad luck. You always got to manage bad luck situations with your actual genomic data, but and none of it's any good without proper ID. I just wanted to, because our conversation is leading different ways. The basic ID point when that calf is born with the RFID tag, there's a lot of animals out there that are misidentified that hurts our database. So, starting primarily with the use of genetics, we find these errors quick, and that's why say I'm not gaining a lot of value from that, but then, of course, the other side of the coin, the 27 or whatever dollars I spend for genomic tests, I've got rock solid identification. And that's the primary starting point of this whole discussion today, is you got to have them identified right. And that's where genomics is a no-brainer.
Yeah, it's very true with the parentage that comes with it. Skylar, Jordan?
Yeah, I mean, I'll build off of that. When you have genomics, it's another level of information you're getting on those animals. It's a more detailed information that you need to be putting in on those animals. So you have to have good identification. You have to have breeders that are putting in the right bulls. You have to have the maternity techs that aren't switching calves accidentally. Genomics will fix that, but it's nice when it's all correct in the first place. But what we use genomics for on a commercial herd, we're using it for genetic progress to get longevity out of our cows, to get profitability, efficiency. We're using it as a mating program to kind of cut out the bottom end, pick out animals for sale when we have extras. We also have an embryo program that we're using it to pick out our top heifers to pull embryos out of. But it's the same thing. We're trying to cut out those outliers that are costing us money, that are leaving the herd within 60 days of becoming a first lac.
Jordan, are you guys genomic testing? How are you using it?
As of today, we are not. We have been for probably 10 years. How we're still using that data, but we've purchased a lot of cows over the last 3 years with some expansion, and we know people didn't sell us their top animals, so that was kind of like a sort right there. A lot of the purchased animals we had in our herd, we didn't continue a lot of those genetics, and so through that, we already knew what animals we were going to breed. So for mating, we're using our top genetics still. We're using the genomics to pick out those animals. We've never used it to really cull calves. A lot of the reason is, like Matt said, we raised what we thought is an appropriate amount of heifers for our site, and you have some bad ones and you got to cull them. It doesn't matter what their what the paper says, how pretty they are, how good they are. If they're not looking good, they got to hit the road. So we're not using it any different than these two.
Yeah, I like Matt's analogy, or the comparison of balancing luck with the information, because things happen to calves. We all know that. Let's go back to a couple of the questions we had kind of planned on asking here too, because I want to make sure we cover the cattle eye topic with you, Skylar. Can you explain a little bit more about what that system is, and if you can kind of touch on what it looks like from a producer side, because I know John's going to talk about it in his updates on the research side.
Yeah, so we started using Cattle Eye probably a year and a half, 2 years ago. Cattle Eye is a lameness detection software. It's basically, it's as simple as a camera. As cows exit the parlor, this camera sits above the cows and it takes a video. Our cows are identified through RFID on our sort gates. So it's integrated through our De La Val sort gates to speak to Cattle Eye and tell us which cows are going through, what video matches what cow. and then it gives it a score from 0 to 100. 0 being not lame at all, and 100 being severely lame. And basically, we're using that data to send cows to the trimmer, get a lower percentage of lameness in the herd. We don't want any cows limping when they're going. They have to walk a long ways, so we don't want them limping, going back and forth to the parlor. We're kind of trying to prevent a little bit by sending some cows sooner. And then on top of that, we're making calling and drying decisions off of cows that maybe should go sooner, with a little bit sooner, just because their feet and legs aren't feeling the way they should be. So.
For the folks in the audience, just a little prelude, I guess, into the research side or how this works. So CDCB is working with you all. You're collecting data. CDCB is bringing that in, and we're doing research on lameness and mobility. So we work with a few partner herds across the country for that data pipeline, for that data flow. And I know John's going to go into more detail, but just so that's that kind of connection that we're able to work through for novel traits, for new genetic selection traits coming down the pipeline. Jordan, let's jump to you. You have done research projects in the past with UW-Madison. What do those relationships look like? What's the value for you in participating in that kind of novel and unique data collection for research?
Sure. I'd say on a yearly basis, there's probably 1 or 2 projects always going on at our farm. Some of it's selfish. We want to know if there's a good idea out there, and we want to have access to that first before they go public with it. So that's half the reason. But to contribute to bettering our industry, I know, like right now, we're doing an interesting study on. We have one of our penna cows has 2 green feeds machines in it, and so cows will go on an individual basis. They eat a couple alfalfa pellets. They get ID'd, and it. We'll scan and for, I don't know, 5 seconds, takes a methane reading from them, and they're comparing that back to the genomic data on those cows. So they want to, by the end of this project, I think, get a link of what does a commercial cow instead of a research cow, which I don't think those are always realistic. But what are they doing? A high production cow, link that back to genetics and say our high production cows may be producing potentially less methane per milk unit, and get really up-to-date data on that. So we're excited. If the data looks good, they have permission to use our farm name, and if it looks bad, I guess we got to put that in the trash.
That's good brand management. I appreciate that. Matt, we were gonna talk a little bit about data quality, and you've mentioned the ID pieces, but I'm actually gonna go a different way. I want to talk about the Powered by CDCB brand as a producer advisory committee member. As data evolves throughout the industry collaborations, how are you using genetic evaluations and selection tools based on your data that's coming into the database that is truly powering the evaluations that are powered by CDCB, that are fueling it, if you will? How are you using that genetic information?
Well, this data that the council puts out is extremely important to my selection criteria to build my herd. And also, you got to remember we're in partnership with Holstein USA with regards to type evaluations also. And the high protein breeds, the council formulates their type evaluations. And, there's been thoughts over the years of, well, I use this formula, I don't need type. But type has always been the foundation of the net merit formula, and of course TPI at different levels throughout the inception. And the reason, I'm going to give you one example. We talk about stature, okay? Is stature a problem? It's not a problem. However your herd is managed, if we don't collect stature data, how are we going to make corrections on it, okay? So it starts with one simple point. And the rest of the data, the foot and leg data, we collect data on rear leg side view, rear legs rear view, and foot angle. Okay, well, that's our basic assumption of foot and legs. Well, we haven't been making a lot of progress in the foot and leg area. So the work that the council's been doing with this cow eye, cattle eye on mobility, this is a crucial story to our future of developing consumer relations. Because when a consumer walks on a farm and sees a cow limping, that's not a good message. And for the farmer, it's always hurtful because, well, first of all, he feels bad for the cow because the cows are always our first concern. Our checkbook is our second concern, and we know that cow is not making money. So through the use of cow eye and this technology that the council as a package is offering, I mean, we're really just scratching the surface, but we all need to work together on this. And when genomics came along, there was a thought, oh, I'm going to make my money the easy way. We're not going to perform the data research. We got our numbers. But you always need to remember with genomics, we're looking at genomic tells a history. It doesn't tell the future. It's not a crystal ball. So if your data is not accurate that goes into our genomic formulations, it's going to be useless down the road. So we really need to keep that in mind as we move forward. But some of the other areas, I mean, I use every trait. When the council, the researchers at pre-genomics, I got to meet some of the researchers at USDA, and they always had in mind a vision of improvement in adding calving ease, cell count data, and then more recently feed saved. The vision is great. So all that data, when we use the TPI formula, when we use the net merit formula, that's integral in the people that go into formulating these formulas. That's kind of funny, but I didn't mean to say that right. But the percentages we put on these formulas are weighted in our minds carefully every time we meet, so we keep the breed on a competitive basis within the U.S. and around the world to keep people interested in our genetics. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I had it explained to me once in the phenotypic genomic relationship that it's really like genomics are our credit card and we're buying our future with our genomic information, but we have to pay off the bill. And that takes phenotypes to continue to support that system. And I think it's probably one of the best analogies I've ever heard from somebody to explain how this all works and fits together. Skylar, Jordan, do you have ways that you're using, or how are you using your genetic information and selection tools beyond what we've talked about already with the genomics and non-genomics today?
I mean, building off of the phenotype and the genomics a little bit, I still, just because we have genomics, I still feel it's very important that we use select sires, and I feel it's very important that my select sires rep goes in and walks my fresh cows and looks for issues, because genomics is a number, but management is another thing that throws a wrench in the whole plan. I mean, it's like you were talking about the sick calf and the bad luck. I mean, if you're a poorly managed dairy with good genomic numbers, you're not going to see those shining cattle like you want to. You're going to see some runts and some chronic calves and stuff like that. But if you have a well managed dairy with detailed genomics, detailed information, you're going to see some of those stars shine a little bit more. So I need to have my rep go in, walk those cows, tell me what he's seeing. What do we need to fix? What are we missing? Is there something that our most recent one is we have some fat springers, and they're affecting the udder a little bit when they freshen. And we know the bulls that we're using are good uddered bulls. We know that the heifers that we have are good uddered heifers genomically, but it's not showing. So we're using that phenotype a little bit to help us with management decisions as well.
Perfect. Jordan?
I don't know if I would say like phenotype data that we're inputting, but like one thing Lloyd was always big on that I think we've just continued to this day is, I mean, we know what kind of animal we need to produce for our facility to really shine. We know what our facility is. And so really focusing on the data of bulls to match with our cows to continually produce those type of cows. So we never want to get out of whack of in our mind, a cow too big, a cow too thin. And that's important to us. And so that's, I would say, maybe a little more of how we're looking at it. We know what we need, and we don't want to stray from that, because that really works, and that's what keeps us here today. And we know we're going to be here tomorrow if we keep doing that.
Before the break, Amy started to talk a little bit about this new messaging that we're really building around the system that CDCB helps to support and our collaborators in this phenotypic data flow. How, as producers, I just kind of want to maybe a little off the cuff here, but how do we encourage fellow producers to submit that data, to be involved in that phenotypic data flow? What is the thing that convinces producers that this has value, not just on the farm as management data, but off the farm as genetic data coming back or bulls coming back that you can use? What does that look like? How do we make that sales pitch? Anyone? So maybe I've asked the $1 million question.
I mean, I was talking to Jordan here earlier, but the Southwest in general, they're very protective of their information. They do not like sharing with their neighbor what they're doing or how they're doing it or even how they're doing. So I guess when I went in on a dairy that was closed off to all its neighbors, they all have this secret formula that they don't want their neighbor to know. My approach to it was just saying that we're missing out on opportunities that I see dairies in the Midwest doing, because they are open to listening. They're open-minded to other dairymen and seeing how well they're doing on a system. And that's kind of taken us light years ahead of where we were 5-10 years ago, just because we have more of an open mindset of listening to what people are doing right and wrong, and kind of how they're doing things differently than how we are. So
I like that. Yeah. Jordan, Matt, anything to add?
Well, changing the mindset, making sure we understand the usefulness of data and then repeating the message. And that's what I heard Amy talking about earlier also. We just need to keep breaking the barriers so we all understand the importance of working together on this issue.
Perfect. All right. Are there any questions from the floor? I realize I haven't looked to see if there's hands in the air, but are there questions out in the audience? Otherwise, we'll go back to some Slido questions. All right. Seeing none. Yell at me if there are. So, audience questions. Gentlemen, what are your selection criteria for sire usage today? What are you selecting bulls off of?
I guess where we start everything is net merit is our index that we like. Use that for first sort, and then we're in a cheese market here, so fat and protein. I use those for sorters, and then productive life. We throw that in there, and by the time we sort for the top on those, it gets pretty small. But I mean, we want cows that live in our herd for a long time, and we want cows that we get a fat milk check from. So that's how we sort.
Understandable. Skylar?
kind of the same way as we're looking at the big picture on bulls. We want cows to be profitable, to live a long life. One thing that we kind of are hurting from a little bit is years and years and years of picking high milk production bulls. That's changed in the last 5 years, but trying to reverse that a little bit where we can get a little bit more components. We can get a little bit better health and repro traits in the herd. We're looking at conformation traits as well, but kind of building off of like Jordan said here, you got to have cows that fit your facility, and we were getting these cows that were so big we couldn't fit them in one of our parlors. So we had to back that off a little bit. We were having to beef some really nice cows just because they were too big. So just kind of watching how cows are being milked, get nice square animals that we know are going to make it through the herd for many years, and be profitable as well.
Our selection criteria is based on kind of a balance of TPI and net merit. And I always take a time out when the bull proofs come out to pick a group of bulls and then kind of match up my semen needs for that period, that 4-month period, and pick a group of bulls, and then I take an average of those bulls, and I kind of, what I call it is I get my bulk tank assessment of that group of bulls. So I make sure my components are going the right direction, my pounds of fat, pounds of protein are where I want them to be, my udder composite, and if I don't follow that, and I make sure my DPR and fertility and all the traits that are important follow that pattern, so I'm getting a good balance of bulls with different pedigrees. I find that if I just buy semen off the truck, I kind of use my heart a little more than my head, okay? Because I've got, certain things, like after Expo, I buy too many type bulls sometimes. So my guys at home monitor me. They go, no. Anyway.
Everyone needs a filtering system, yes. But it's easy to get excited about the really nice cows, that type traits that are here, right? You're going to watch the Brown Swiss show, I'm assuming, when you're done this morning, because that's happening in the colored shavings right now. But it's easy to get excited about pretty cows when you're at World Dairy Expo. There is a question for you, Skylar, in here about Cattle Eye. How effective has Cattle Eye been, in your opinion, and how could it be improved for your operation?
It's been a big part. So I talked about goals. We were challenged by our vet saying that we were the worst dairy he had that when it came to lameness. That was about 2 years ago. And I basically told him, I said, in a year from now, you're not even going to think about lameness. So that was part of our game plan. I kind of caught on Cattle Eye pretty early on when they brought it to Arizona, just kind of a feel to see if anybody wanted to jump on and try it. But it's been pretty much a big part of us catching that goal. We've gone from being his worst herd to being one of the better herds in Arizona when it comes to lameness. We just, for example, had an audit yesterday with FS&S, and out of 100 cows, he didn't find a single one that he would have scored as a lame cow. So that's just a humbling feeling, knowing that Cattle Eye, better foot care, a trimmer that knows what he's doing, and people to train, that all has led to that one achievement. So
that's great. That's incredible. Nice work. We are in our about final minute. Do any of you have closing comments, things you wanted to make sure we got out into the world this morning that we did not cover? Oh, all right. We did well then. We'll wrap up about 30 seconds early then. And I'm going to say thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us and for sharing your insight and your thoughts. Please join me in giving them a great round of applause. All right, I'm going to excuse you all from the stage. And as they're making their way off the stage, we are going to shift our focus to the research and innovation that's underway at USDA's Animal Genomics and Improvement Laboratory and at CDCB. The work done by these teams, along with the partner universities across the country, is truly possible because of the strength and vitality of the National Cooperator Database. Genetic selection traits, from milk components and functional type to fertility and feed efficiency, are all a part of this integrated value of the system that we work within and to support, that we continue to hear about this morning. Without a strong and healthy national database, research and innovation would be hindered, and genetic improvement on our farms would truly be slowed. So with this understanding that these projects are truly closely related to the integrated value of the U.S. genetic evaluation system, please join me in a warm welcome for USDA research geneticist, Dr. Asha Miles.
All right, good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here at World Dairy Expo again. I'd like to thank CDCB and, of course, the organizers at Expo for the opportunity to speak to you about the work that we've been doing at Agile in the last year. We'll cover a variety of topics today listed here on this title slide, but I'd like to jump right into the very first topic, which is in validating genomic predictions for cows. And this isn't really the most innovative or glamorous project we've ever done, but I do think it's one of the most important. And the way I think about this study is that it's like an audit. So we've seen a substantial increase in the rate of genetic progress since the application of genomics in 2009, but a lot has changed in the last 15 years. Not just genetic technology, but also management, nutrition, veterinary care. The way people are using genetics and genomics has also changed, such that 93% of the genotypes we have in the National Cooperator Database are now female. And so this sort of begs the question, how well are genomic predictions actually working? How well do they correlate to a cow's future actual performance? So in answering this question, we identified a cohort of genotyped heifers born between 2019 and 2021 that we wanted to follow. And so at their time of birth, we extracted the predictions that were calculated. And this is really critical because none of them had developed any sort of phenotypes yet that could then come back in and bias the predictions of their performance. We followed these animals through at least their first lactation. Some of them had their second lactation, and then extracted the yield deviations for the same cohort of heifers for economically important traits. And the number of records we were using as they shook down with different quality measures are shown here in this green box. We did look at the 5 most common dairy breeds in the US, and as is an age-old story, we have much lower numbers of records for some of the less common breeds like Ayrshire, Guernsey, and Brown Swiss. But with Holstein and Jersey, we have a substantial number of records that were included. We did observe an unbalanced number of these records across traits. So these are the largest numbers you would see for things like milk, fat, and protein. And of course, some of the newer traits or traits that are not recorded on all farms would have a lower representation in the study. So the numbers I want you to focus on this slide are on the right-hand side in this red box. And this is a percentage, I should have had a percent on there, that are essentially representing the predictive ability of our evaluations. So GPTA would be the genomic ones, PA for parent average, the traditional pedigree-based predictions. And so the way we've calculated this is by taking the reliabilities and dividing it by the heritability of the given trait. The reason for this is because we can only predict what the animals are genetically capable of, right? As I've mentioned, I'm going to be a little inflammatory and say genomics is not the ultimate answer to the universe, life, and everything. That answer is 42. If you've ever been familiar with the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, you know what I'm talking about. But there are a lot of other factors here. So probably one of the most noticeable things about this table of numbers is the numbers above 100%. If genomic predictions were working absolutely perfectly, all of these numbers would be 100. The reason that they're over 100% is because the official heritabilities used in the evaluations were calculated using only 1 lactation's worth of data. Because these animals, some of them have had first and second lactations, we're using a much larger number of records in this type of analysis. So the takeaway there is that in the official heritabilities used, we may actually be underestimating the heritability of the trait. So that explains why that number is bigger. The other major takeaway is that for virtually every single trait, with 2 exceptions, genomic predictions are vastly outperforming traditional parent average. So there is significant advantage conferred by using genomics. So if you're interested in more details, that's just a snapshot of results for Holstein and only one of the types of analysis. This published paper is now available in a preprint online. So there's a link there that you're welcome to follow to read the paper. But the takeaways from today are that there is a significant advantage to using genomics. Predictions for smaller purebred populations, which I did not show today, will improve as more data become available, as will some of the other certain traits which have lower heritability and less data available. And then, of course, that potentially underestimated heritability suggests that cows may actually end up outperforming their own predictions. Stuff like this validation study are fundamental to assessing how we're doing, but they also provide support for all the future work and development we do on new traits like milking speed. So you're probably aware that the CDCB Board of Directors appointed a task force to evaluate the feasibility of implementing genetic and genomic evaluations for milking speed in the US. And over the last couple years, the task force has been working on research on these 4 different objectives. This has been presented to this group and in several other places, and all those presentations are available online at the Agile website also. I'm happy to direct you there if you'd like some more information about the phenotypic and genetic investigations we've done. Today I'd like to talk primarily about Objective 4, which has taken the brunt of our focus in the last year since this meeting, which is how do we standardize a trait definition, and what do those heritabilities look like, and how suitable is it for selection? The reason standardizing it is a real challenge is because these data are coming to us from inline electronic milk meters on farms. It's not researcher collected, it's not even technician collected. So there is a fair amount of error that comes with the sensor generated data, and also the vast amount of data is in the hundreds of millions of records. So figuring out how to clean it, how to process it, what types of biological and system effects, management effects are impacting them has been a huge focus. And what I'd like to do is tell you about the trait that we are proposing based on all of this research. So first of all, the type of data that we're working with are individual milk yields and milking durations for every single milking in a day for every single day in a given lactation. So again, this is a huge amount of very high resolution cow level data. So the first step in developing this evaluation was we know that there are significant stage of lactation effects, and that milking speed more or less mirrors the milk production curve over the course of a lactation. So those effects were removed as fixed effects before we built the genetic model, and then those residuals were averaged into lactation records. The genetic model did include some of the variables we identified as having a huge impact on these measurements. This would include milking frequency, parity, milking meter manufacturer, which I'm denoting as OEM in this presentation, as well as some of the more common covariates of herd year, genetic groups, permanent environment effects. These models were built for Holstein and Jersey. Initially, that's who we had the most data for, and all breeds were evaluated together. This table is showing you some statistics on the traditional PTAs, pedigree-based data. Somatic cell is just there as a point of comparison in the bottom row. This is a trait we've been evaluating for a long time. These are the values of the exact same bulls. So you can see that the reliabilities are an average for milking speed of about 70%, but they range all the way up to nearly 99%. And that's simply a function of how popular the bull was in this particular data set and the number of daughter records available. The total number of lactation records used in this analysis were about 50,000, and again, only complete lactation records. So CDCB's Genomic Evaluation Methods Committee has reviewed this proposed trait and endorsed it. The Dairy Sire Evaluation Committee has also reviewed it, and so the eventual expression of this trait will probably deviate from what you're seeing in this table here, where they have supported expression of this trait on a phenotypic scale, but standardized to an average of the phenotypic mean instead of 0 to avoid negative values, which can have undesirable connotation. So we're likely to move forward with that recommendation as well. Genomic PTAs were also derived. I don't have those numbers shown here on a table, but for young Holstein animals, those predictions averaged about 47% reliability compared to 70% for established traits with much more data. So the next step, research has essentially been completed for that proposed trait definition. And the Agile teams have been working on developing all of the downstream programs and processing. Amy was talking this morning about all the sophisticated systems required to both ingest data and then process it and report it back. So a lot of modification has been required. to get this trait ready to interact with the system. However, investment in infrastructure has been critical, both on the CDCB side, but also on the side of our dairy records processors in terms of what it takes to collect this type of data and transmit it. This is the very first time we've tried to move data of this scale and this type, and it's likely to be the first of many traits that we move forward with using sensor-generated data. So it has required a substantial investment and cooperation with our partners. So a new format 8 for data transfer, has been developed in cooperation with our data providers. That process has been ongoing since about May of this year. And it requires essentially what I've listed here as novel data types for us to be able to produce accurate, reliable evaluations for milking speed. One thing I do want to point out is that for the original equipment manufacturer, we have designed this format to be able to contain the same number of characters used in the iCar device reference IDs. So if this is not a project you're familiar with, it's the International Committee on Animal Recording is working on standardizing IDs for different milking meter types and manufacturers. So this is an ID that would allow us to identify both who the OEM is, but also what exact meter is used. And so that's going to confer a significant advantage over even just the research data where we only knew the name of the manufacturer, but not necessarily the device type. So takeaways from this is that through years of research, we've identified that many factors influence these quantitative measurements that are sensor generated. But overall, we're very optimistic. This is a highly heritable trait. I think heritability in our data set was 0.37. And we're able to develop evaluations that we believe will be of significant economic value to producers. This methodology has been approved already by the GEM committee, reviewed by the DSEC committee, and endorsed by the CDCB board of directors. Now we're at the point of ensuring that we can have stable data flow, which is key to any healthy evaluation. We're working with a lot of research data now, but especially with genomics and accelerating genetic progress, data becomes old very quickly. So we need to make sure that we have everything we need in place to have this continue. So we're highly optimistic about delivery of this new trait in 2025 for Holstein, with Jersey to follow as more records become available. And of course, research is going to continue in parallel with this on the incorporation of partial lactation records. The proposed trait I showed only used complete lactations. So partial records will allow us also to boost that reliability and accuracy at a much quicker rate. And the trait that's been developed has only been using data coming from conventional milking parlors. So research is also ongoing to explore the use of the robotics data, which we do believe will be a different trait based on the factors affecting it. Now, in March of this year, I went to Ohio and met with the sire committees for select sires, and I was asked the question, do we have a calf health research program? And the answer was no, and I thought, we really should. So the next topic we'd like to talk about is the progress we've made in this area in the last 6 months, led by a big team at Agile here and CDCB as well. So one of our first questions is, well, what's the landscape when it comes to calf health? We know that 75% of pre-weaned calf mortality is due primarily to diarrhea and respiratory disease. But the heritability reports in the literature from other studies are really varied. And we think this is mostly due to a lack of centralized records and reporting. A lot of these studies are done on small populations of animals, or at universities, or in a particular country. And so, or the diseases themselves are not documented and recorded in the same way. So calf wellness has been addressed commercially, but it's not yet in the U.S. national evaluation, so this is something that we'd like to address. But the good news is that pipelines already exist for the transmission of this type of data. It can be transmitted through format 6, which has been around for at least 10 years, and we do have data available. So these two graphs are showing frequencies of diarrhea and respiratory events across age in days for the individual calves. Calculated heritabilities on our research data set for these traits are both about 2 to 3%. We do notice that for respiratory especially, there's kind of a bimodal distribution here. So the numbers on the graphs are a little small. Respiratory is the right-hand graph, And you can see we're tracking respiratory events for the first year of life. That's 0 to 365 days. We do have a theory that that second spike might be related to post-weaning stress, but again, that's difficult to tell from the type of data we have available to us. We have been able to develop some preliminary evaluations with this data using an animal model and covariates of herd year season and the parity of the dam herself. We do see that, it's possible to generate these evaluations even with the limited amount of data that we have. Standard deviations are high, reliabilities are not as high as we'd like them to be. That is related to available data. We have noticed a drop-off in the amount of data coming into the National Cooperator Database since about 2021. We had a large influx of data and then it started to reduce. And there are a couple reasons this could be happening. We're taking active steps to address that. One is simply that the data wasn't being used, so it wasn't a good investment of records processing centers and providers' time to transmit data. So now that we're advertising this work and indicating that we want to move forward with this, we're hoping that will improve. Another theory is that the way people are sourcing their heifers and managing them is very different. And they could be getting most of their replacements from a grower, and maybe the grower is recording these events and not sending them back to the farm, or even if they are, they're not communicating. We heard this just from the panel too. If you get a clipboard with a sheet of paper and a bunch of information, how does that get entered into your system? And how does that then get transmitted to us? So that's another key hurdle that I think we need to be aware of as we try to implement new traits and offer new solutions. Now, kind of as a point of interest, incidence of these diseases was generally higher in Jersey calves than in Holstein. But the bottom line is that there's a lot of potential here. This is just one example of all the potential that can come out of the integrated system, which is, of course, something we've been hearing again and again from speakers today. And another major takeaway here is that this is a trait that could have a really fast turnaround time on delivery because of the existing infrastructure. So we're excited about this work, and I'd like to, of course, thank the open discussion that we have with stakeholders like you in facilitating projects like this moving forward. And the last research project I want to cover in detail is related to developing new projection factors for milk fat and protein yield predictions. This is something we've talked to you quite a bit about as the project has been getting rolling, and we've made some exciting progress. So the inception of this project comes from this question: how do we estimate yields? And historically, herds that wanted to know their yields would participate in DHI testing. They'd have a technician come to the farm, they'd sample one of the milkings. But that's only part of her yield. From that, her total daily yield would be extrapolated. From that, her total lactation yield would be predicted or extrapolated. And then, of course, to standardize for fair comparisons, you would have had the 305 MEs, now 305 AA. Now, for this research project, we're really only focusing on that first half of that equation. How do we get accurate estimates and projections of the yields themselves? So the design for this project is to enroll about 10 to 15 herds across the United States that capture modern U.S. dairy farming. So these would be the most popular breeds, primiparous and multiparous animals, different housing systems, and different milking frequencies. And the design is to sample them at very high frequency during the first 120 days of milk. So this means we're working with milk labs and, of course, DHI technicians to collect samples on a cohort of cows weekly in the first 120 days of milk. Once that period of time passes, they're followed through the rest of their lactation and tested on a regular monthly schedule. And so the idea here is that with more observations early in lactation, we can refine predictions of total lactation yields at an earlier time. And this is really critical because, as we know, most major economic decisions are being made for individual animals early in lactation. So this is the slide I showed you last year with the status of this project, where by the end of October, we'd enrolled one farm and we'd just completed that weekly sampling for them. Our data set had represented about 64,000 milk samples, which was about 1,200 cows. We're also collecting feed samples so we can relate forage analysis to the actual components in the milk. We're measuring the traditional components, but also casein and fatty acids. And we're also getting a copy of all the raw mid-infrared spectra data that's used to generate those component reports so that we can use it to predict new traits from milk samples as well. And all of this totaled about 68 million data points. And we're very pleased to announce that now we've worked with 4 farms at this point and essentially quadrupled the amount of data that we have. So representing about 9,000 cows now, a pretty even split between Jersey and Holstein. We've collected almost over 240,000 samples, almost 500 TMR samples, and this is of course representing 251 million data points. At this point, we're working with 5 milk labs across the country, ranging all the way from the West Coast to the East. We've completely finished that first farm we showed you last year. We have 3 that are now in progress, and of course 4 in preparation to begin. So the bottom line here is that this is a massive undertaking in cooperation with both us at USDA Agile, National DHIA, and CDCB. And it will have immediate impacts and immediate management benefits. But of course, this more accurate prediction and estimation of component yields will, in the long term, enhance genetic selection as well. So there's never enough time to tell you about all the exciting work going on at Agile and of course at CDCB and with all of our other cooperators. So I do like to acknowledge that none of what we do would be possible without having this multinational team of people who are working on things. So these are some topics that I hope to be able to share with you about in the future that we are actively working on. And towards the goal of completing these projects, I'm also happy to share that for the first time in over 5 years, Agile is fully staffed. So we're very excited to be welcoming new talent to our team. Dr. Mahesh Nupani is leading the calf health research. He's been a postdoc with Agile for about 5 years. He was instrumental in the delivery of heifer livability. Dr. Jason Graham is a recent graduate of Purdue University. He has a lot of experience working with sensor-generated data, especially in automated calf feeder systems. And he's also working on the review of female fertility that Dr. Cole will talk about after me. And then Dr. Bailey Bazile has joined us as a postdoc. She's a recent graduate of Penn State, where she was co-advised by a dairy cattle geneticist and a beef extension specialist. So she's actually uniquely positioned to work with us on beef on dairy solutions. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your attention and welcome any questions.
All right, I'm going to have Asha keep the microphone because we have one question really quick here. Says, excited to see the validation efforts. Is this planned to be done routinely and shared with key advisory committees?
I think that's a fantastic idea. As you can see, the study is brand new. That's the paper that's available is only a pre-proof. It's not even like officially published yet. But I think it's really key to assessing how we're doing and being honest with ourselves. And of course, advisory committees is essential for input on how we can improve.
Wonderful. Well, join me in another round of applause for Asha. Thank you very much. We are going to stick with our research updates, but shift to projects that are underway at CDCB with our new Chief Research and Development Officer, Dr. John Cole. So welcome to the stage, Dr. Cole.
Okay. Thank you, Katie. All right. Oh, wow, that's sort of an echo. That sounds weird. I'm put a timer on my phone so I don't go over on my slides. So if I'm looking at it, my phone occasionally, I'm not looking at Twitter, I'm looking at the time. So I'm very excited to be here this morning for maybe my first opportunity here with CDCB to talk to you about what we're doing. And I would like to thank Asha for setting the stage for us. And I would like to emphasize that a lot of the work that we're doing at CDCB, we have a fantastic team in-house, but a lot of the work that we do is in collaboration. We work our long historic association with Agile, but also with other groups. So I'm going to get right into it because I have like a lot more slides than I have minutes, and I'm between you guys and lunch, and that's not a great place to be. So I'm going to go fairly quickly through topics, but hopefully we'll have a few minutes for some questions. So I'm going to give an update on where we are with our review of the fertility traits. I'll also discuss our work on single-step genomic evaluation. I know a lot of folks are interested in that. A short update on lameness and foot and claw health, which thankfully the panel did an excellent job of helping lay some groundwork there. Give a sneak peek at the 2025 base change. And then if I have time, I'm going to spend just a couple of minutes reviewing the summer intern research that our three folks worked on while they were with us. And then finally, I'll wrap up with a little bit about enteric methane emissions and some work we're doing in that area. So to get right to it, on our female fertility traits review, the first question, right, is, well, why are we actually taking the time to do a deep dive on these traits and review how everything's working? Well, I think this is a great example of the value of communication and feedback between CDCB and all of our partners in the industry, right? Whether it's our colleagues in the AI companies, it's the producers. Folks came to us and said, hey, some of these DPR evaluations don't really seem to make sense to us. In particular, we see a lot of young bulls whose DPR evaluations change when they add daughter records. And it's not unusual for records to change a little bit when the daughter data come in, but folks were saying these changes seem to be bigger than makes sense to us, right? And in particular, we were overestimating the initial PTAs and they were coming down. So we went to the data to actually take a look at it, right? So let's see what's going on in the data. And so a number of tests have already been done internally, led a lot of that work's been by Taylor McWhorter on the CDCB team. And so we're looking at things like herd by sire effects, and as well as we have adjustment factors in the system that we use to pre-adjust the data before they go into the genetic evaluation. Some of those factors were calculated several years ago and haven't been updated. So we're doing some work on those, right, so that they actually get updated with time. And it was talked about a few minutes ago, actually. I was talking to someone about it. Automation is good. And I know the producer panel talked about it in a sense as well. You don't want to have to look in 15 places to get information. You want to look in one. And one of our challenges has been, as the number of evaluations has grown and the pace of things has increased, well, we sometimes find places in the system where things were done by hand, and now we need to make sure they update themselves. So we're reviewing the raw data, right? To make sure that there's not some sort of shift in the data, either in the number of records or in the information in the records. We're also doing work on the data edits, because you want to keep as much data as possible. So you want to make sure that you keep the good data and you don't throw out useful data, but you also don't want to keep suspect data. And as I also mentioned briefly, we're looking at some improvements to the statistical model, things like adding herd by sire effects for all traits, that we think will hopefully stabilize the situation here. And I'm going to actually come back in a few minutes to this issue of other ways we think we might improve the stability of the fertility evaluations. And that is when we get to the single-step genomic evaluation. And I know that sounds very complicated, but I would actually suggest that a single-step system is less complicated than our current system. Because in our current system, we take the pedigree and performance information and we estimate traditional genetic evaluations, right? Just like we've been doing since the 1960s. And then we add the genomic information into it in a second step. The point with single step is that you can put all of the information together from the beginning. And I would argue that that's actually simpler, because you're only doing one thing instead of doing two things. So we're investing time and resources into single-step evaluations because the multi-step evaluations do not use all of the data that's available. And one of the other concerns, and this goes back to what my brief discussion of the female fertility traits, is that we believe, we in the broad sense, including other folks outside of CDCB, believe that single-step models provide more accurate estimates of genetic trends, right? And that's one of the things that we've seen with the fertility traits in particular, is that if you look, we say, oh, we're making this rate of gain, but then folks come back from the field and say, well, that doesn't match with what we see in the actual cow's performance. And there are also advantages for traits such as feed intake, and then looking down the road, say possibly to some measure of methane or greenhouse gas emission. When a trait doesn't have very many records, single step seems to do a better job as well in those calculations. And folks will have to accept this on faith, I guess. The math is easy, relatively speaking. It's really the operational aspect of things that's difficult. And I'm not going to really spend a lot of time on that, but the point is, the hard part's already done in some ways. Now, this work did require, we're working with software that was originally developed by the team at the University of Georgia, so Ignacio Nistel's group, and work with Daniela Lorenzo in that group. We have had to make some changes to the software to meet needs that CDCB has that's different than the needs that the researchers have. So we've had to do some work so that we can fit a little more flexible types of models. I won't really talk about sire models here, but one of the differences, for example, is that we need we have different groups of traits for different breeds, right? So the Holstein traits we evaluate aren't identical to the traits we evaluate for Jersey or Ayrshire or Guernsey. And then also we do something called a threshold model analysis for sire cavities, daughter cavities, sire stillbirth, daughter stillbirth. And so we needed to make some changes to the software to support that. The reliability approximations need to be improved. And I'm afraid I don't have time to really talk about that very much right now, but that is something that is important. And Andres Lagara on our team has been working a lot on that. And then, on the CDCB side, not so much the University of Georgia side, we need to make some changes to our data processing pipeline so that every file's in the right place at the right time. So where are we? Because I know a lot of my colleagues in the AI sector have asked, hey, when are you guys going to get single step deployed? Well, I can tell you that we're actively in the testing phase, and we're testing across all trait groups. The last time I talked to Andres about it last week, I think they've got the interval data coming in the way it's supposed to. That's important. And then we're going to do some test runs to check and verify results, right? We discussed earlier the importance of the testing that we do so that results are credible and you're not surprised by things. And in particular, we want to be able to run 2 consecutive runs and make sure that there are no unexpected changes that could be due to the new model. Now I'm going to briefly get into lameness and foot and claw health, and I appreciate the panel discussion about it so that maybe I don't have to try to explain too much. And I do want to point out that I know for folks in the audience, just so you know that we're aware, here I sort of group hoof health, mobility, and lameness together. We are aware that those are not identical things, right? Mobility is not exactly the same as lameness. And then that whole issue of hoof health is maybe related to lameness and mobility, but it's also its own thing. So we've been involved now for a few years in a project with the folks at University of Minnesota, looking at both Well, really, the goal is, hey, how do we go out and get data that will drive a genetic evaluation for this? Okay, there we go. And so we sort of have two sources of data in that project. One is mobility scores, which is nice. That's collected using cattle eye systems on a few different farms. And appreciate the discussion, like Skylar sharing their experience with cattle eye, as well as information about hoof lesions that's collected by trimmers when they're on the farm. So these are kind of two different. One is an automated pipeline for the collection of data. The second is sort of using expert knowledge of observations on the farm. And the data are continuing to accumulate. Kristen Gaddis at CDCB, many of you have seen Kristen speak. She's working on this project, doing a fantastic job. So, at this point, we've done internal evaluations to sort of test different trait definitions, see which ones might have higher heritabilities, lower heritabilities, because it's a challenge to figure out, hey, which of these is the best measurement to use in a genetic improvement program? And someone might say, well, if these are all measuring useful things, well, then maybe you need more than one trait. And that's going to get me in trouble because I keep getting told that there's too many traits already. But I want to point out that we have good heritabilities here in the sense that they're in that range anywhere from, say, 10 or 12% up into 20 or 30%. So we can make progress applying genetic selection for these traits. We have also been working with DRMS, and we're also talking with the other DRPCs about getting lesion data that's recorded in the on-farm systems. Because one of the challenges, I don't have time to really go into it today, I'm already running out of time, is that you want to make sure that if you start a data flow, right, you build a pipeline and data start coming in, that those data continue coming in for the long term. And so, hey, cattle eye seems to be a good source of one sort of measurements. It's great to get data from the hoof trimmers, but there's a lot of information that producers record in their on-farm system. So can we also tap into that source of data to build a robust database of information that we can use, right? So, can those data be used? That also lets us build on our existing infrastructure and relationships, and that could also let us turn things around quickly. And so Kristen's been working on this, about 700,000 records. Overall incidence of these lesions is about 8%. Now, obviously, different lesions can have different causes, so you can't necessarily put them all together. But again, a little bit limited on time to go into that. We've got heritabilities of 2 to 6%. It depends a little bit on what kind of statistical model you use. But I would say that this is generally in line with what other researchers have reported using these kind of data from lots of different studies in lots of different countries. So it appears to us that that's certainly a potential source of usable data. So we're going to continue working on that. Our next major step is going to be to get sort of a single phenotype defined, right, a single trait, so that we can move forward towards a potential implementation. Everyone knows we have a base change coming up in April 2025, and so I know folks want to see what the magnitude of the change in traits might be at the base change, and I will show you that in a minute. These slides will be available on the CDCB website. And I'm going to say this even though I suspect that some folks may not really hear me. What I'm going to show you are estimates. When the actual base change values are published in April, they're going to be different from this. But, we wanted to share this because we know this is an important topic for a lot of folks. These are early predictions. They will change. Please don't take a photo of this slide with your phone and then go and make a bunch of decisions off of it unless you're just kind of a risk taker. So why do we change the base in the first place, right? We get this question. Well, the major reason to change the base is so that you're sort of comparing apples to apples, right? Because there is genetic progress in the population. And if we never change the base, you end up comparing younger animals to older animals, and you're not really comparing them the right way. And, typically when we do a base change, PTAs will go down because we're changing the reference point that we're using to set values to 0. It does not mean that anybody's done anything wrong, right? It's just a mathematical consequence of changing the base. So when we do the 2025 base change, we're going to take the average PTA for cows born in 2020, and we're going to subtract the average PTA for cows born in 2015, right? So the cows born, that will be our new reference group. Changes greater than 0 mean that the younger cows have higher genetic merit, generally, than the older cows. I say generally because we have a couple of traits where the signs are backwards, and so a negative value is, not bad. So these are the estimates, and I know they're a little bit small. They're small numbers on my screen. They're bigger numbers on your screen. We're looking at a lot of folks are going to look first at milk. You're looking at close to an 800-pound change for Holsteins. Jersey and Brown Swiss have the next largest changes. Not much smaller changes for the breeds with fewer animals in the population. The trend for DPR remains unfavorable, and so in this case, all breeds have an unfavorable trend in the base change. I would urge you, as an editorial point, I think if you really want to work on fertility in your herd, you should consider more focus on heifer conception rate and cow conception rate, and maybe a little bit less focus on DPR. So I did compare this to the numbers from the previous base change, from the 2020 base change, and I would say, generally speaking, this is in the same ballpark. So I didn't feel like something changed radically in unexpected ways. So we'll have final estimates out for the 2025 run, I believe. I'm about out of time, so I'm going to sort of skip through the summer intern projects. Please take a minute, if you can, to look in your annual report that you were handed as you came in, because their projects and their hard work are described in that report. And they did very nice work, and my skipping over them is not meant to minimize that, but I also want to respect time. And so I'm going to wrap up here by talking about the work we're doing with the Greener Cattle Initiative on enteric methane emissions, right? So these are the cow, well, we know it's the burps. A lot of folks get confused and think it's the other end of the cow. That's the problem. So what we're doing is we're working in a multi-institutional project here to phenotype about 4,000 lactating cows for their methane emissions, right? So how much are they producing in lactation for this? And there's a few aspects of this. The first is selective breeding. We want to phenotype these lactating cows so that we have a reference population, so we could potentially develop genetic tools. I know somebody's probably going to ask me about the Lactanet tool, and I'm going to put that off. Milk spectrometry. Asha mentioned the mid-infrared milk spectral data. We're also collecting that for these animals. The reason we do that is there's a lot of potential of those spectral data to be used as predictors of other traits. But again, you have to have a training population. I don't really have time to talk about microbiome stuff, but there's a lot of really cool things going on there, right? If you look at the bugs in the rumen, but not just in the rumen, also in the hind gut of the cow. So very fun stuff there. And really at the end of the day, oh, my phone is telling me I'm at time. So I'll wrap this up. Geez, sorry. So we know from our work and the work of other groups that methane traits are heritable, right? That means they're under at least a partial degree of genetic control. Where we're doing data collection both in research herds and in some commercial herds. And, Genomics is a very important tool working with these traits where they're expensive to measure, so we don't have very many observations, right? Because it can let us get to genomic PTAs with reasonable reliabilities fairly quickly. So if you think about what we did with Feed Saved and RFI, and there are a number of institutions in this project. This is not a CDCB only effort. We're involved with some of the land grants, so with University of Florida, Iowa State, Michigan State, University of Wisconsin, as well as with ARS. And I think this is my last slide. And so what are our preliminary results? Well, when we analyze the data, we have a nice heritability for methane intensity, which is a measure of how much methane is emitted per pound of milk or fat or protein produced. And there's also kind of the idea of this residual methane yield, which is how much methane the cow gives off when you've accounted for everything else, like how much milk she's giving or how much feed she's eaten. So good heritabilities in both cases. This is promising. So as we build up our reference population, and establish a pipeline for the ongoing collection of new data, I think we'll maybe next year have some great results to report about progress there. So I'd like to acknowledge all the folks involved in these projects, the dairy producers first and foremost, the DRPCs, the staff at Agile and CDCB, and I think we have a few minutes for questions, Katie.
Yes, you are correct, John. We do have a few minutes for questions. I'm not seeing any inside. Are there any from the floor? If not, people are going to let you off easy today.
Yeah, that feels like a trap, because it feels like as soon as we come off of the stage, something, hey, I just had a quick question.
Well,
so,
that's for you to handle.
I'm happy to visit with anybody after this meeting, and I appreciate everyone's time. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you, John. And Zhao is making his way this way. But first, I'm actually going to welcome back to the microphone Lindsay Warden. Lindsay?
Thank you, Katie. So good morning again, everyone. At this time, or as our meeting's drawing to a close, I just have a special presentation that I would like to share. As many of you know, last year at this meeting, we celebrated the 10-year anniversary of the signing of the non-funded cooperative agreement, which laid the foundation for the Council on Dairy Cattle Breeding as we know it today. Last month, we celebrated another important 10-year anniversary milestone, and that's the hiring of the first CEO to lead CDCB, who we're fortunate to still have with us here today. Joao, would you please join me up here on stage? CDCB has grown to exceed the vision of the founding board of directors, who pictured a staff of around 4 people who are responsible for performing the service work associated with the National Dairy Cattle Genetic Evaluations. In many ways, this segment of our industry has grown and changed in ways that some of us could have only hoped and dreamed for. In the decades since CDCB was established in its current form, the staff has grown to almost 30 people, as Joao showed up on the screen earlier today, who are located across the United States and around the world. We have launched several new trade evaluations, and annual research funding has grown to over $2 million, and the National Cooperator Database has grown to include more than 9 million animal genotypes. None of this could have been accomplished without strong vision from everyone involved and a talented staff to execute the daily work that's required. I've been on the CDCB board for about half of Joao's tenure, and I've enjoyed getting to know him a little better over the last year and a half as chair. It's been fun to watch the organization and the team continue to mature and dream about what could come down the road. Joao's passion for his work and his staff is obvious, and he has a strong vision for where he would like to see CDCB go. He is fostering an outstanding culture amongst his team, and in speaking with many of them, it's evident that they share his passion and vision. I gave a presentation very similar to this when we had our last CDCB Board of Directors meeting in August, and we had a very fun evening with staff, but we felt it would be appropriate to recognize Joao at this venue today and share this milestone with all of you. So, Joao, congratulations on your first 10 years of service with CDCB, and here's to the next 10 years and beyond. And we've got just I'll share the gift that we had presented Joao with. We've got a custom cowbell here, and we gave this to him last month, and I've heard from some of the staff that he might like to walk around ringing it every now and then, so.
Thank you. Thank you. Are you?
All right, I'm going to turn the microphone over again here for some closing comments and a few more awards that we need to present and some more thank yous we need to give. Just a few little items on my end. We do want to thank everyone who joined us here in person today, but also really great to note there's another 200 people who have registered to join us online today as well. So the growth within this group in the last couple of years has been really fun to see. So thank you all for being a part of this, whether you're here or online. We would also like to invite you to the next CDCB event, which is our producer exchange, which will be hosted in Reno, Nevada on March 31st of 2025. This is a shoulder event to the Western Dairy Management Conference. We're excited for that event to take place, and there'll be more details shared as we go. But you will note that is the day before the April proofs drop. So great timing on our end to share some industry news. There are CDCB coffee mugs available across the room. Please take those home with you. If you sat in the back of the room where there isn't a mug on your table, the staff was expecting everyone to sit in the front. So please find a table up in the front where there's a coffee mug. Take that home with you, enjoy it, and make sure you show that off. And then last but not least, there are recordings of this session today. Those will be available on YouTube and the website in the coming days and weeks. So watch for a summary email with the links and information for that. And we will also address a few more of the Q&As that were left in Slido that we did not get to. So I think that's all I have in terms of housekeeping. I'm going to go back to Zhao for our final remarks.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for also the cowbell. I mean, I've been using it a lot in the office since I got it, and people really appreciate it, you know. So there are two more individuals we want to thank and celebrate this morning. The first is Mark Rogers of Glover, Vermont. I don't think Mark is with us today, unfortunately, but Mark recently finished his time on the CDCB Board of Directors, representing the DRPCs. And he provided a strong producer voice in the board when we had board's decision-making process, and was always good for a lively conversation. Mark was not able to join us in Madison this morning, but please join me in a round of applause of thanks for Mark, and we will make him receiving the plaque. The second industry leader that we want to thank is John Clay. John, please, can you come here? John's impact in the dairy industry can be seen in many ways. While at the RMS, John led the team that developed PC Dart, now known as Dart, along with other software and management tools. He played a key role in the dairy cattle industry, acquiring access and then providing the accuracy of phenotypic evaluations for bull fertility evaluations known currently as sire conception rate, SCR. In his leadership role at the RMS, Clay has been instrumental in supporting and providing data for dozens of initiatives to help researchers at land-grant universities explore dairy science. On a number of occasions, the RMS has provided research data to USDA and CDCB geneticists for traits not previously evaluated nationally, so that research could be completed and new evaluations implemented. And John was a key visionary in saying that he wanted to support this type of research. In 2013, Clay was instrumental in the transition when the Council of Dairy Cattle Breeding took over management of the National Cooperative Database and the calculation of dairy cattle genetic evaluations from USDA. A member of CDCB's board of directors since the inception, He has served on numerous committees as well as board secretary, vice chair, and treasurer. John recently resigned from his seat of the CDCB board of directors, and as of yesterday is officially enjoying retirement. So, John, please make your way to the stage. We are here, and we have a award to recognize your contributions to CDCB. And everyone, please join me in a big round of applause because John has been really instrumental. I personally consider myself really privileged to have had you as my counselor, as my part of the group that was mentoring me at the beginning, and you have always been open to discuss and contribute in any kind of discussions we had. Really, thank you very much and enjoy your retirement. We are all grateful as a industry as a whole. Okay. You want to say something?
Well, I can say that today's session should encourage all of us to be optimistic about the future of CDCB. Just really impressed by both the desire and capability of the staff and the board to continue to provide high value information to dairy producers in the industry. So this is a very reassuring session here today. Thank you.
So with that, I would like just to finish by thanking all the speakers and panelists. I will thank Katie Schmidt as being the main organizer of this event and all the staff that has helped us to get this done. Also, I would like to thank National DHIA staff for printing the materials for us. They always have been really instrumental in helping us with this logistics in medicine. Also, really appreciative of everybody that is here and online. I mean, we live from these inputs, from these exchanges, from this collaboration. And this is very, very important. I hope you're living here today as I am, really optimistic about what we have coming for us for the next year. And let's continue to cooperate. Thank you very much. Enjoy the World Dairy Expo from now on. Bye.
Take a little smoke, take a little whiskey on ice. Never get behind, killing my mind. This is the kind of things I like. Just